Chapter 657. Brother, did you end your training with Leo so soon? Achi, who was deep in thought, realized that List had returned early, so she asked curiously. List smiled reservedly. I didn't train, but I have successfully ridden a dragon and become a real dragon knight. He had originally planned to laugh out loud to express his excitement, but he still held it in and told the news with a calm expression. Ah! Achi shouted, her face full of surprise. Brother, you have successfully ridden a dragon. That's great. Brother, you are a real dragon knight. You are at the top of the world. Keep a low profile. Leo is still young and he still needs to explore his training as a dragon knight. We have to keep a low profile for now. List waved his hand. Then he asked seriously, Achi, now that I have successfully ridden a dragon and become a real dragon knight, it is time to separate from the Tulip family. What do you think is the best surname for me? Normally, Dragon Knight families use the dragon as their surname, and the Sapphire Grand Duke uses the sapphire as his surname. Achi tilted her head and thought for a while. Should we call it Flame? Flame is too vulgar. It doesn't match the dignity of a dragon knight. What about Flame? I think it's not high enough. How about Flame burning the sky? What do you think, Achi? List voiced out his opinion, but he quickly rejected it. Although Flame burning the sky is high enough, it doesn't fit the image as a surname. It is a verb. The naming rules of this world were mainly based on nouns. Sapphire, Tulip, Golden Ear of Wheat, Immortal Kalai, Eagle Sword, Black Knight, and so on all used nouns as surnames, or it could be said that they used certain gemstones, plants, or objects as surnames. Since List gave his blood servant the surname Daybreak, it was not strange to give him the surname Flame Burning the Sky. However, he still decided to follow the traditional rules and choose a noun as his surname, which would continue to be passed down in the Dragon Knight family. Lava? Volcano? Burning? Ah. He couldn't think of a better surname after thinking about it over and over again. In the end, he brought up the Flame that Achi mentioned before. Why don't we name it Flame for the time being? Anyway, the news of the Dragon Knight has to be handled in a low-key manner. We'll decide on the surname after the official separation. List Inferno made up his mind. Then he took out 2 juices from the gem space, handed one to Achi and drank the other. Achi, celebrate with your brother. Yes. Cheers to my success in riding a dragon, and to Achi's early advancement to a magic shooter. After drinking the juice, he briefly talked about the feeling of riding a dragon and asked Achi to fill in the gaps. It was basically confirmed that the Dragon Knight's contract to ride a dragon required a battle of the soul. Only by achieving harmony and unity in the battle of the soul could the knight share the same fate as the dragon. In addition to riding on the Dragon Fang platform, the triggering conditions for a battle of the soul with a dragon would require a perfected high-level Do-Chi. The rest of the details needed to be slowly pondered. So after putting away the glass, Achi continued to meditate on the weave. List sat on the reef and thought about his dragon riding career. Without the Dragon Soul Fruit, I don't know how long it would take me to dissolve Leo's hostility, get its approval, ride on the Dragon Fang platform, and carry out a battle of the soul. The outcome of the battle of the soul was also unknown. The battle of the soul is too difficult. I still have 2 Dragon Soul Fruits, which means I can still have 2 opportunities to ride a dragon. One for the invisible dragon and one for the smoke dragon? List thought about it. Although the invisible dragon had a heavy taste, it had great strategic value. The value of a space gem was definitely far greater than any other gem. It was both a holy dragon and a gem dragon. It also had a good relationship with List, so it should be said that it was in the bag. As for the smoke dragon, I haven't figured out whether it exists or not. Did it infect me with the power of fate, or did it attach its power to me after its death and want to use me to resurrect? If it's the first, then am I a servant like Paris? Not really. The white dragon was in the state of a ghost and could only be transformed after death. The black dragon was always infected by the magic of the dragon and could be eroded at any time. Although he had the power of fate, there was no sign of erosion. He could still cultivate chi and ride a dragon smoothly. I'm afraid the smoke dragon wants to use my power to resurrect. When it resurrects, I guess we have been together for so long that it should not need the help of the Dragon Soul Fruit. Moreover, the Dragon Soul Fruit was drawn by the power of fate. There was no reason for the smoke dragon to harm itself. The smoke dragon should be put aside first. It's hard to say whether it wants to resurrect or not. Then which dragon should I give the 3rd Dragon Soul Fruit to? By the way, I need to contract a dragon to get the status of Dragon Domain Lord. This should be a young dragon. If I can find the fairy dragon that represents life and contract it directly, Won't there be hope for immortality? The fairy dragon definitely existed. The invisible dragon and the smoke dragon both existed, so it was impossible for it not to exist. It was just that it was difficult to find it. If he used the power of fate, it was possible to find it. So this third dragon soul fruit is estimated to be given to the fairy dragon. If I encounter other dragons along the way, I will try to use my own strength to ride the dragon. It is impossible for all dragons to ride with the help of the dragon soul fruit. Otherwise, all kingdoms would plant soul fruit trees in batches and allow their children to ride dragons at will. He remembered that the fire dragon was an evil dragon. It was arrogant, cruel, and evil, so the battle of the soul required defeating the evil dragon. If it was a gem dragon or a metal dragon, the battle of the soul would be different. Perhaps it was just a test of each other's temperament. The dragon probably needed to choose the most suitable knight through the battle of the soul. The right to use the dragon soul fruit was distributed. List exhaled a long breath of turbid air, jumped into the sea and swam freely, washing away the stinky sweat on his body. Just now, when he leveled up to advanced level, his body went through a strengthening, metabolizing a large amount of waste. It made his body stinky, which made him, who had a slight obsession with cleanliness, very uncomfortable. Chirp. The seven-colored whale Lolth came over and was ready to let List ride her. List patted her on the back, indicating that she could play by herself. He was ready to dive into the water himself to see how strong his body was now. Perfect chi, successful dragon riding. Although his strength had improved by leaps and bounds, his body was obviously not as strong as a dragon's. Maybe one day he could switch between his physical body and dragon will form at will like a dragon. At that time, he would be able to ignore the strength of his physical body and do whatever he wanted. He practiced his swordsmanship in the water. He successfully tested the strength of his body. The amplification was more than doubled. A normal Sky Knight's ultimate move could only cause light injuries to him, unable to hurt his internal organs. However, a Sword Saint's attack could still cause serious damage. His body was now equivalent to normal steel. A simple punch without chi could probably kill a low-level World of Warcraft. Lolth, take me underwater. Let's see how deep I can dive. Chapter 658. This chapter is titled Grow, 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 Grow. Rose could dive to a depth of 1,500 meters. List's previous test was 400 meters. He couldn't go any deeper. He still remembered the whales on Earth. The killer whale's diving limit was 260 meters, the blue whale's diving limit was 500 meters, the sperm whale's record was 2,035 meters, and the champion's record was the Korsha's beaked whale's 2,992 meters. This had nothing to do with strength. It was just a matter of body structure. The king of the ocean, the killer whale, was only 260 meters. Similarly, Ichi was a spirit of the sea. She could dive to a depth of 1,500 meters without a problem. Rose could also dive to that depth. But a normal whale could dive to a depth of 2,000 or 3,000 meters, but it might not be able to beat Rose. Rose was a low-level dragon-type sea monster. At this time, Rose led List down. A rope used to determine the depth of the water was constantly released. The tip of the rope floated on the surface of the water. Maintaining a vertical position was the depth of the dive. As the depth of the dive increased, the pressure that the body felt was constantly magnified. They easily reached a depth of 400 meters. He touched Rose's dorsal fin. You can still continue. Rose, go down. Rose obediently followed his instructions and continued to dive deeper. The depth increased bit by bit. When they were about to reach 550 meters, he finally couldn't hold it anymore and signaled for Rose to stop. He wanted to familiarize himself with his body's tolerance at this depth and determine his diving limit. 550 meters, this is my new diving limit. After diving, he took a bath and had dinner. List returned to the crater and continued to wait for little Leo to wake up. Little fire dragon Leo was still having sweet dreams. His sweet dreams were a little monotonous. He just wanted to go out and rob people and bring the wealth back to his crater. Sparkling gems and gold coins were his favorites. Night fell and the moon shone brightly. List leaned on Leo's thigh. In his boredom, he suddenly thought that if he could experience Leo's sweet dreams, then if Leo wanted to, he should be able to experience List's sweet dreams as well. As long as Leo willed it, it would be able to sense what List was doing at night. No, absolutely not. Everyone needs a private life. List valued privacy very much, especially at night. I have to block the mental connection at this time, just like how I blocked the elves' mental connection. He had dozens of elves, and if all of them activated their senses, he would be overwhelmed by these emotions. Therefore he did not need much training. After a period of exploration, he would be able to automatically block the emotional connection. Now he was trying to figure out how to block Leo's spiritual connection, not only to prevent Leo from affecting his dragon riding career, but also to ensure his own privacy. The difficulty was high, but it was not impossible. It just needed time. In the first half of the night, he fumbled with the shield, and in the second half of the night he fell asleep. The next morning, List woke up before the sun rose as usual. When he woke up, he saw the little fire dragon, Leo, turning his head to look at him. Leo had woken up at some point in time. When it saw that List had woken up, it immediately let out a cheerful roar. Roar. The mental connection allowed its emotions to fill List's heart. It was pure happiness. After getting rid of the evil thoughts, Leo no longer resisted List. Wait a moment, Leo. I need to brush my teeth and wash my face first. After List quickly washed up, he directly rode on Leo's back, who had been waiting for a long time. He sat down on the dragon tooth platform, and it was as if he and the dragon had become one again. The battle energy in their bodies circulated, and their hearts also reached a harmonious frequency. They breathed and shared the same fate. He took a deep breath, waved his hand and said loudly, "Let's go." Leo's legs stepped on the cliff, and his body instantly leaped into the sky. His fleshy wings flapped, and he flew steadily into the sky. Their hearts were one and they could move at will. There was no need for any verbal communication. Leo understood what List was thinking, and List also understood what Leo was thinking. They were one. They flew higher and higher, and they had already surpassed the height of 100 meters that a sky knight could fly. As far as the eye could see, a chi who was deep in thought had already become a small dot. A thought flashed in his mind. Let's go down and say hello to a chi. Leo had already cooperated and descended to the foot of the mountain. He flew extremely fast and his body emitted a warm aura, but there was no heat. Even if the dragon tooth platform under List's but was like the scales on other parts of his body, with sparks flashing between the cracks, it would not cause any harm to List. Fire dragons had absolute control over fire magic. As long as they did not want to, they would definitely not let magic casually transform into real flames. Whoosh. Wings swept past the skulls, and in the blink of an eye, one man and one dragon arrived at the seaside. They landed next to the rocks by the seaside where a chi was. This eye-catching appearance immediately caused the eyes of the little sea monster to flash with worship, surprise, and excitement. Big brother. Leo. Roar. The little fire dragon greeted in disdain. Towards people other than List, it still had an arrogant and contemptuous mentality. In essence, it was just an evil dragon. If it were not for List's spiritual guidance, it might not even look at a chi. It was the pinnacle of power, not a cat or a dog. List patted Leo's head and told it to lie down. Then he turned over and jumped down, saying to a chi, "Come, I'll take you for a ride." A chi was stunned for a moment. But a chi can't leave the shell. Then take the shell with you. With that, List directly lifted a chi's large shell, which was nearly 3 meters in diameter. Fortunately, he was now very strong, and after running the dragon's fighting spirit, it was not difficult to carry a heavy object. Leo objected to carrying the shell on its back. However, its objection was ineffective, so it could only turn its head and look at the sky, acting helpless. Leo let List use a rope to fix the shell to the scales on its back. Leo was more than 20 meters long from head to tail. Its back was very wide and it could not only sit people but also transport items. The sapphire dragon had been used as a means of transport in the past. List tied the shell, quickly sat on the dragon tooth platform, and motioned for a chi to sit in his arms. A chi's face flashed with a blush, but she still sat in List's arms gladly. She was used to this kind of intimate behavior, although she had learned a lot after reading a lot of books and gradually became shy. She was growing up, and she was no longer the naive little siren who didn't know anything, but she still couldn't resist List's intimate behavior. The soft jade in his arms. The feeling made him short of breath. List forcibly suppressed his heart and urged Leo, who was a little unhappy, to take off and fly toward the blue sky and white clouds. Leo, fly up, I want to know how high you can fly. The wings flapped. Leo answered him with a majestic cry, roar. Chapter 659. This chapter is titled Fallen Feather Burial Wind. The wind was howling and the white clouds were rolling. Leo rushed to a height of thousands of meters in one go, and came to the clouds that were usually visible but unreachable. Feeling the wonderful feeling of the clouds brushing against his face, List was extremely excited. A chi who was in his arms was already trembling with excitement. perhaps also a little frightened. As a spirit of the sea, she had never been so high in the sky. Roar! Leo let out a roar. He transmitted his thoughts to List. He had climbed to the limit of his current flight ability. No matter how powerful he was only a young dragon, and did not have the ability of an adult dragon to travel tens of thousands of meters in the sky. The reason why dragons were rare had a lot to do with their ability to fly high in the sky. The sky was full of clouds and it was easy to hide. Since we have reached the limit, let's go down. List was just riding the dragon for a ride. It was very cold at high altitudes. Although he and Achi had strong physical fitness and were more resistant to cold and heat, there was no need to suffer like this. Besides, the surrounding was full of clouds and the scenery could not be seen clearly. It was more appropriate to circle around the island to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Leo immediately folded his wings and fell down as if he was in free fall. Compared to the time it took to fly, free fall was obviously faster. In a few breaths, he could already see the skull trees on the island. Before falling to the ground, Leo stretched his wings in a thrilling way, and his huge body suddenly stopped falling. He bent a few skull trees, then flapped his wings and pulled up his body that weighed more than 10 tons, and began to fly steadily around the island. After 2 laps he landed on the beach. List put Achi down, and the little siren was already flushed with excitement. She was probably the first siren to fly thousands of meters in the sky. "How is it? Does it feel exciting?" asked List. "Yes. Calm down, I will take Leo to complete this training first." He only cared about riding the dragon, and had not practiced dragon breath tempering and demonic dragon chi refinement. Moreover, he still had to explore the next step of training to complete the smoke mission, so as not to delay Achi's advancement to magic shooter. Compared to Leo's reluctance during the training, Leo was very cooperative this time. Furthermore, due to the spiritual bond, the human and dragon's minds were connected, allowing them to adjust the details of their cultivation at any time and increase the efficiency of their cultivation as much as possible. It took him half a day to complete the 2 cultivation methods. For the rest of the afternoon, List tried out the new cultivation methods. But deep into the night he still couldn't figure out anything new. Seeing that the moon was about to set, List rubbed Leo's big head and said, "I'm going back tomorrow. You stay at the crater and train well." "And you mean you want to go back with me?" Through Leo's telepathic communication, List was pleasantly surprised to discover that Leo didn't need to stay in the lava every day. Basically, he could absorb the ultimate magic power condensed in the lava once a month to form his own dragon will. The rest of the time he just soaked in the lava and slept. Obviously, Leo had been deceiving List before, or he didn't like to stay with List and other humans. Now, after the mind and soul became one, Leo began to be attached to List. This was a good thing. List quickly agreed, "You can go back with me, but you need to exist in the form of dragon will most of the time. Don't easily show your flesh and blood in front of others." Leo nodded in response. "Then you go down and absorb the dragon will condensed in the volcano, and we'll set off together tomorrow morning." Roar! Leo suddenly stuck out his big tongue and licked List's face. There was no saliva or dragon saliva, only warm fire magic. Then he suddenly took a step back and fell off the crater cliff. When he landed, his wings shook and he plunged into the rolling lava. The night passed. Early the next morning, with the hemp rope vine seeds and a batch of skull fruits, List called for Leo. Leo directly transformed into the dragon will and crashed into List's body, condensing into a fire dragon pattern in the form of flames on his chest. Down the mountain. He called the colorful whale Lolth, who was playing on the beach, and then called Achi and directly returned. 10 hours later, they arrived at Black Horse Port in the afternoon. He let Achi take the previously contracted seaweed sprite to the seaside villa in Flower Town first. List was ready to inspect his territory. There was a peanut sprite that might breed a sprite worm, but he didn't check it. "Sir, you are finally back." Gort came to greet him. "What happened in the territory?" "Sir Count has returned to Tulip Castle. Yesterday afternoon, a messenger knight was sent to invite you to Tulip Castle to participate in a family banquet." "Really? Did the messenger knight say anything about the follow-up of the development order?" "Simply put, the iron ore mine in Kurong Mountain has been moved out, a total of 12 million tons of iron ore. No dragon knight rushed back to compete for the iron ore mine, but the first prince announced the end of the development order in advance after all the iron ore mines left the Eagle Kingdom coastline." "They have all returned smoothly?" List was surprised. This time 12 million tons of iron ore were looted, but no dragon knight was dispatched. The Count had looted no more than 200,000 tons of iron ore and was chased by a dragon knight. The comparison between the two was incredible. The messenger knight said that Sapphire's orders of chivalry have all returned safely. Not only did the Coral Island orders of chivalry not decrease, but there were also 800 more Earth Knights than when they set off. Sir Count's promotion to the rank of Marquis is already clear. The Grand Duke personally announced it in Ironhoof Island's Oxhoof City. The Grand Duke went to Oxhoof City? Yes, the Grand Duke personally oversaw Oxhoof City and held a military merit conference. It was basically clear that Sir Count's military merit is enough to be promoted to Marquis. Sir Count has even discussed which part of Ironhoof Island to choose as his fief. Which part did my father choose? The messenger knight doesn't know. Sir Count doesn't seem to have announced his choice to the public. Basically, the messenger knight explained these things. The specific details could only be known after Liszt personally went to Tulip Castle. In order to urgently know the news, Liszt did not stay in Port Town. He rode the seven-colored whale Lolth and hurried to Newport Town. He inspected the peanut plantation. Sure enough, the peanut sprout was pregnant with a sprite worm. After instructing the security group's worm protection team to look after the worm stalks, he returned to Flower Town without stopping. He then returned to the castle to take a bath and change his clothes. Riding the chocobo Loki, he quickly rushed to Tulip Castle. He arrived just before dark. His arrival quickly alarmed Tulip Castle. The Count personally led his family and many servants to the gate of Tulip Castle to welcome him. Chapter 660. The son of glory of the Tulip family was once a polite flattery, but now it had become a fact. If Liszt could not be called the son of glory, then the Grand Duchy of Sapphire probably did not have a son of glory. He was the youngest Sky Knight and the successor of the Ghost Blade. He had defeated the Domain Knight and captured the Sword Saint. He had seized the iron mine and obtained the largest iron ore harvest in the past 100 years. Such a flashy feat could be described as a road of sparks and lightning. It was very difficult not to attract attention. Now that the expansion order had ended and the process of the war had spread throughout the kingdom, nobles and commoners on every island were probably talking about Liszt. Even in the Eagle Kingdom, Liszt's name was well known in a small circle. At least in the Roaring Estuary all the nobles knew him. With such a strong son, Earl Lee William had to personally welcome him at the door to show his respect and attention to Liszt. Naturally, the family and servants of the strong family had to show their respect. The once invisible and timid second son of the family had completely disappeared. Now in everyone's eyes, Liszt was a brilliant genius and hero. There was no dispute that he was the most outstanding descendant of the Tulip family. Father, thank you for welcoming me personally. This is the treatment you deserve. I am proud of you, my son. Lee William reached out and patted the shoulder of Liszt, who was already a head taller than him. He always felt that the glory of the night was on Liszt alone. He had the strength to suppress the top masters, the handsome face that could charm thousands of girls, and the luck of picking up an elf. Any one of these was enough to make people crazy with jealousy, not to mention all three. He turned around and said to Madame Marie, "Go tell the kitchen to prepare a New Year's banquet tonight. Okay, you father and son talk more. I will personally supervise the preparation of the kitchen." Madame Marie smiled and left. The Earl then said to Lytton, "Go tell grandmother and sister that we will attend the banquet tonight." Then he said to Loria, "Go make a pot of tea and send it to the study. We will go to the study and chat for a while." "Yes, father." Loria also smiled and left. Only Lee William, Levis and Liszt were left. They went straight to the study. Regarding the Tulip family, the decision had to be made by these three men. To be precise, Lee William and Liszt had to negotiate with each other. Levis was just a bystander. "Father, did the transportation of the iron ore go smoothly?" It was surprisingly smooth. Alonso Cyclamen never showed himself, but we didn't dare to stay at the mouth of the Roaring Estuary for too long. The iron or Dragon Mountain belonged to Alonso Cyprus. Cyprus of Alonso Cyprus Knight did not show. Dragon of Cyprus Cyprus of Cyprus, Dragon Cyprus of, after of Cyprus of Dragon. Even if he could not come, he should have sent someone to fight for it. In order to show his presence, Levis quickly interrupted, "Father and I have already discussed this. We feel that it is possible that the war at the border is bothering Alonso. In addition, all the Domain Knights below the rank of Dragon Knight cannot defeat you, so we might as well strategically give up on the iron mine at Trap Dragon Mountain." Liszt nodded, "That is a possibility. For now, this possibility was more logical, so he did not continue to think about it. He had already succeeded in riding a dragon. No matter what kind of threat he faced, he would be safe. He was more concerned about the distribution of war credit. Then how does the big guild define our war credit? How many tons of iron ore will they give us? Where is the marquisdom that he promised father? What does he think about me and the Grand Duke? We obtained the main war credit for stealing iron ore, but a large part of the war credit for transporting the iron ore was given to us. I estimate that the big guild will give us 100,000 tons of iron ore. The Earl said with a pained expression. This part of the iron ore will naturally belong to you. List smiled and did not say anything. The war credit belonged to the Earl and the spoils of war belonged to him. This was already agreed upon. The Earl continued, the Grand Duke is directly guarding Ironhoof Island. Although everyone was wrangling during the war credit conference, the Grand Duke clearly told me after the conference that I could choose one of the 3 marquisdoms of Ironhoof Island, Oxtail and Oxhoof, as well as the marquisdom of Ironhoof City. Why is there another marquisdom of Ironhoof City? Father, what is your choice? Ironhoof City is a big city second only to Blue Dragon City, where the palace is located. A marquisdom of the Blue Blood Alliance will be able to supervise Ironhoof Island. I chose the marquisdom of Oxtail. The marquisdom of Oxtail needs to face the mainland directly. The marquisdom of Oxhorn is more complicated, while the marquisdom of Oxtail is relatively more peaceful. Lee Williams' thoughts leaned towards the middle. Oxhorn City was the starting point of Sapphire's attack on the mainland, so it naturally had to shoulder the heavy responsibility of suppressing the sea. Oxhorn City was once a prosperous city no less than Ironhoof City. Sapphire's various underground forces were mixed in Oxhorn City. Only Oxtail City was not so eye-catching and suitable for low-key development. The Tulip family was only a count family, and its background was far worse than that of the Taro family. It needed time to develop. Choosing the marquisdom of Oxtail would allow him to govern the big city of Oxtail City, as well as the 2 big cities of Oxtail City and Oxtail City, as well as the vast surrounding land, which was enough for the family to develop. It's a good choice. List nodded, expressing his understanding. The Count glanced at List with a complicated look in his eyes and said, there is another reason why I chose the marquisdom of Oxtail. The Grand Duke wants me to choose the marquisdom of Oxtail. Because the Grand Duke told me that among the 3 marquisdoms of Ironhoof Island, the marquisdom of Oxtail has the weakest development potential, but he wants to leave the marquisdom of Ironhoof City to you. In this way, the combined forces of us father and son will surpass the marquisdom of Oxtail and Oxhorn. List could not deny this, checks and balances. But I prefer to stay in Black Horse Island and Flower Town, where I work hard to develop my foundation. I also don't want to follow the Grand Duke and become a marquisdom of the Blue Blood Alliance. In addition to robbing, the aristocrats of the Blue Blood Alliance relied on the Grand Duke for survival. List was not even willing to be a follower of the Grand Duke, let alone a hound in the hands of the Grand Duke. Even the marquisdom was not rare. After all, he was a dragon knight who wanted to build his own country. You still have a lot of time to think about it. This time all your military exploits will be given to me, but after all, it is too much. I believe that as long as you choose to follow the Grand Duke, I can still share some of the military exploits and meet the conditions for your promotion to Count. If you join the Blue Blood Alliance, I'm afraid you can directly be promoted to the marquisdom of Ironhoof City. Inwardly, the Count hoped that List would choose the marquisdom of Ironhoof City. Ironhoof City was the largest city of Ironhoof Island, and its attached territory was not much smaller than that of an ordinary count. With List's strength, it was unlikely that he could be ordered around by the Grand Duke at will like the other blue blood aristocrats. Basically, he was equivalent to half a feudal and half a blue blood aristocrat lord. If he joined forces with the upcoming marquisdom of Oxtail, they could become the largest force of Ironhoof Island. At that time, the Tulip family would become a true great aristocrat second only to the Sapphire family. But to his disappointment, List simply shook his head. I can't follow the Grand Duke directly. Brother, I'll have to trouble you to go out and see if there's anyone walking around and send them away. Chapter 661. Levis walked out of the study and closed the door. He was not a fool. Naturally, he could hear that List wanted to send him away. Although he was unwilling at this stage, he really did not participate in the family's high-level secrets. In the study, the Count and List sat in large chairs. Just now, Rolia came and brought a few cups of brewed tea. The Count sipped the tea and waited for what List was about to say. He was really a little curious. His son seemed to be unwilling to follow the Grand Duke. Logically speaking, being able to become a follower of a greater noble was something to be excited about. Being a direct follower of the Grand Duke was certainly more opportunities and benefits than being a follower of a count or a marquis. This kind of good thing was something that other aristocrats would definitely break their heads to get, but when it came to his son he simply refused. It was really hard to understand. Last time it was okay. Liszt was just a viscount. Even if he followed the Grand Duke, he would not get too much of an important position. It was better to follow the count and help the family compete for glory. This time the marquis was in sight. With such a great status and glory, it was unreasonable to refuse again. He did not understand. Liszt was very clear about what he was doing. The reason why he did not want to follow the Grand Duke was very clear. He was a noble dragon knight, and the Grand Duke may only be the lord of the dragon domain. The sapphire dragon was also disabled. How could a dragon knight be loyal to a disabled lord of the dragon domain? If Leo found out that he was subservient to a disabled sapphire dragon, he would probably go crazy on the spot. Father, you must be wondering why I don't want to follow the Grand Duke or separate from the family. Liszt said calmly, the reason is very simple. I don't like the surname, Macroalgae. It doesn't sound dignified and I have a more noble surname to choose from. Don't like the surname Macroalgae? What a strange reason. The Count found himself more and more unable to understand his son. What noble surname do you have to choose from? I haven't thought about this surname yet. The Count was stunned. What? Liszt weighed his words. According to my inference, the Grand Duke did not succeed in riding a dragon at all. He is just a lord of the dragon domain. Moreover, the sapphire dragon was severely injured. Not only did it not recover, but it was also likely to lose its lifespan. That's why I shouldn't follow such a lord. He despised the sapphire Grand Duke a little. Back then, the Grand Duke who appeared on a dragon was really impressive. He looked like he was riding a dragon in a noble manner, making people think that he was really a dragon knight. However, in the end he was just a lord of the dragon city. At this moment, Liszt was organizing his words and summarizing the pros and cons to see how he should inform the Count of his identity. Now that he no longer needed to be overly cautious, it was time to communicate with the Count, and let the Count weigh the future of the Tulip family. Once the country was established, the Tulip family would definitely follow him. Now, how the Tulip family would develop in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire was another plan and strategy. The Count did not know this. Hearing Liszt's words, he suddenly frowned and his tone became serious. Liszt, I know you are strong. As a Ghost Blade inheritor, you can defeat a domain knight. But the strength of the Grand Duke must not be underestimated. Even if he is not a dragon knight, just a lord of the dragon domain, he can still easily kill any ancient warrior inheritor. In fact, he can't kill me. Even in a fair fight, the Grand Duke is likely to be unable to beat me. You are too young and arrogant. Is it the defeat of a domain knight that makes you so blindly confident, or is it the Ghost Blade inheritor that makes you think that you are stronger than a dragon? Father, I know the strength of a dragon better than anyone. Then you should understand your current identity. You still need to respect the Grand Duke in order to develop in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Have a sip of tea first, let me organize my words. Liszt reached out and motioned the Count to calm down. His expression was indifferent, as if everything was under control. He was a dragon knight and Achi was a magic shooter. Although they had not grown to their peak, their combined strength was definitely enough to compete with the Sapphire Grand Duke. And his identity would be announced sooner or later. It was impossible to keep it a secret for a lifetime, and he was not willing to bury his head in wretchedness. The Count was by far the most suitable person to inform at the first time. With the Count's cover, his identity as a dragon knight could still be concealed. But it also saved him the trouble of following the Grand Duke. The Grand Duke had given him the option to follow twice, and it was difficult to explain his repeated refusal. Although he was not willing to bow to the Lord of the Dragon Domain, if it was beneficial to his development, it was not impossible to endure humiliation first. But he was more worried about one thing. The Grand Duke had been with dragons for decades, and now he had become the Lord of the Dragon Domain. What if the Grand Duke discovered his identity as a dragon knight when he pledged allegiance to him on the spot? At that time he was afraid that it would not just be a matter of pledging allegiance, but it was likely to involve a battle of dragon slaying. One should not have the heart to harm others, but the heart to guard against others. Who knew when the Sapphire Grand Duke found a dragon knight whose strength had not yet risen? Would he choose to care for and provide an environment for growth, or would he choose to use violent means to rob the young dragon? There was a 99% chance that he would rob the young dragon and leave it for his own family to survive. At that time, whether Liszt defeated the Grand Duke or the Grand Duke defeated Liszt, it would set off huge waves. If a foreign dragon knight took advantage of the situation, he was afraid that at that time, the situation would not be able to be cleaned up. So the Count's cover was very necessary. A father would prevent his son from pledging allegiance to others in order to make more achievements for himself. It might seem greedy to outsiders, but it was indeed an excuse that made people speechless. After a moment, he had figured out the details, so he told the truth about his identity. I have to confess one thing to you. There's no such thing as a slayer's inheritance. It's just a cover. I've been practicing the orthodox knight cultivation system from beginning to end. I'm just a sky knight. There is no ghost blade inheritance? The Count's face changed and then he stared at Liszt. But your strength is stronger than a domain knight. Don't tell me that this is because of your talent. Half of it is because of my talent and the other half is very simple. I am a dragon knight. He calmly revealed his identity. What? The Count suspected that he had heard wrong. Liszt seriously repeated, I am already a dragon knight. Dragon knight? The Count stretched out his hand, and his expression was very stiff. You mean dragon knight, a dragon knight riding a dragon? It's a fire dragon. Fire dragon? Evil dragon? Don't worry, I will restrain it from doing evil. The Count heard this and nodded slightly as if he had accepted this fact. He leaned back in his chair and then picked up his half-drunk tea on the table, his movements very casual. However, Liszt still carefully noticed that the tea in the transparent glass cup was trembling slightly. He wanted to bring the cup to his mouth, but the cup trembled more and more and eventually his whole arm trembled. The tea in the cup almost spilled out but he could not bring it to his mouth. Finally, the tea in the cup was shaken out by him and a large amount spilled on his chest, but he did not seem to feel it. He looked at the void in front of him. Dragon Knight, right? Chapter 662. Every day Warsong would change his account to send gifts. The study was quiet. The weather in September was not as hot as August, and the windows had all been replaced with glass, making it very bright. The Count seemed to hear what Liszt was saying, but his mind was no longer on this channel. Many fragments of time emerged in his mind. There was the shock when he saw the sapphire dragon for the first time under the leadership of his father when he was young. There was also the joy when Melissa gave birth to her second son, and the strength of the family with only one son. He worked hard all his life to achieve the glory of the family, to let the tulip bloom in sapphire. The tulip family, under his efforts, gradually became famous in sapphire. All aristocrats, big and small, knew that there was such a family and such a sacred swordsman of waves. However, he did not know when. Perhaps it started when Liszt came of age and decided to be in theft. The results of his efforts, which he was proud of, seemed to become more and more ridiculous. He became a sky knight at the age of 23. As the son of a small aristocrat, he was enough to be called a genius. However, his second son, who was abandoned by him and did not receive any resources, became a sky knight at the age of 18. He inherited his father's estate and cultivated a great tulip and 12 lesser sprites. Liszt picked up a great sprite and a bunch of lesser sprites while swimming. The number of sprites produced in the palm-sized territory was almost as many as the harvest of Coral Island in 10 years. He had been yearning for an intermediate World of Warcraft mount since he was young, but he never got one. Liszt first raised a batch of intermediate World of Warcraft Blizzard beasts, then picked up a batch of black blood horses with extraordinary bloodlines, and then there was the flying chocobo Loki and the diving seven-colored whale Lolth. Most importantly, he was now 46 years old, while Liszt was now 18 years old. In an actual combat exercise at the beginning of the year, he, as a sacred swordsman, was suppressed by Liszt and had almost no power to fight back. He convinced himself to accept this, to accept the reality that his son was stronger than him. He also convinced himself to accept that his son was the son of glory and would naturally be blessed by the glory of the night. As a result, suddenly, Liszt became a ghost blade inheritor, and his strength was enough to defeat a powerful domain knight head-on. In any case, the Count believed and tried hard to convince himself that he should be proud of his son, proud that his son could bring him incomparably glorious military exploits. Especially when the Grand Duke personally promised him 3 marquises on Ironhoof Island for him to choose from, he really felt that he had given birth to an outstanding son. The achievement of the Tulip family, which originally required the hard work of several generations, was easily achieved. This was already the perfect ending. He was promoted to the Marquis of Oxtail, List was promoted to the Marquis of Ironhoof Island, and the Tulip family was divided into two marquises. But now he heard something. Dragon Knight. The Count felt that the foundation of his worldview, outlook on life and values that he had worked hard to convince himself had collapsed. All that was left was confusion. What confused him was that everything he had fought for in his life had become laughable material in front of the news that List had become a Dragon Knight. Those struggles, those perseverance, those unyieldingness in front of the Dragon Knight were nothing. The tea in the cup spilled on his clothes. Like an old man, he indulged in recalling his life experiences, joys and sorrows, as if hiding in these memories. It was as if hiding in these memories, he lived like a true sacred swordsman, being praised and praised by countless people, and shouldering the fate of revitalizing the family. He did not have to face the huge, shocking news that oppressed him to the point of suffocation. Until a thunderous voice rang in his ears, "Father!" Only then did he suddenly recover from his trance. His hand trembled and spilled the rest of the tea. Looking at List, who was waving in front of him, his mind was still not completely clear. "What? Your tea spilled." "Oh, it's okay, go ahead." He put the teacup on the table, looked down at the water stains on his chest, took a deep breath, and tried to make his mind return to normal. "Where was I just now?" "Yes, you said you are a Dragon Knight, right?" "I just explained it once, Father. You were probably distracted." List was quite helpless. Who would have thought that just the news of the Dragon Knight would scare the famous sacred swordsman of waves like this? The Count suppressed his chaotic thoughts and said, "Then listen to it again. I have obtained the recognition of a fire dragon and have become a true Dragon Knight. The reason why my strength has become so strong is because I have trained with the fire dragon. My chi has evolved into dragon chi. Now my strength is increasing rapidly every day. If I were to face Marquis Wild Tao again, I would probably be able to finish him off in one move." "How do you compare to Marquis Bull?" "Easily defeated. Back then, the Grand Duke almost defeated Marquis Bull in one move. Can your strength compare to the Grand Duke?" After a few deep breaths, the Count's thoughts had returned to normal, and he was no longer in a trance. He had regained his father's dignity. However, the water stains on his chest were a little conspicuous. List nodded. When the Grand Duke defeated Marquis Bull, he was already surrounded by 100 Sky Knights and was already an arrow at the end of its flight. "I dare not say that I can definitely defeat the Grand Duke, but it shouldn't be too big of a problem to fight him on equal footing." The Count did not immediately reply. Instead, he casually tapped the table with his hand, deep in thought. After a moment, he looked at List and said seriously, "Then, since you are already a Dragon Knight, where is your fire dragon?" "I hid it, but I can let you feel my dragon might as a Dragon Knight, Father." The corner of List's mouth curled up into a smile. He connected to Leo telepathically, and instantly used Leo's dragon might to surge from his body. He did not use his full strength and only limited it to the study. However, this simple release of dragon might cause the Count to have goosebumps all over his body. His chest seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and he held his breath in as if he would suffocate at any time. "That's right. That's the feeling. Dragon might. It's as strong as the Grand Dukes and the Sapphire Dragons." After the dragon might dissipated, the Count swallowed a mouthful of saliva, a little bitter and a little excited. He forcibly suppressed his emotions and asked in a hoarse voice, "List, when can I see your fire dragon?" "Whenever I'm free, I'm free." "Huh. Don't you need to communicate in advance?" "Father," List said calmly, "I am a Dragon Knight, and the fire dragon is a partner that I fight side by side with and recognize. When I call it, it will appear. There is no need to communicate and negotiate like the Grand Duke used to raise the Sapphire Dragon." The Count suddenly slammed the table. "I understand, but I need some time to calm down. Let me sort out my thoughts. We will talk in detail after the dinner. I will go and chat with my brother for a while. Father, you can think about it calmly." List got up and left, leaving the study to the Count. The door closed. Chapter 663. This chapter is Fantasy Reaper 11 Reward Added. The atmosphere of the banquet was harmonious. Madame Penelope was particularly active. The old madam was no longer healthy, but she was in a good mood. Although she did not know that List was a Dragon Knight, her son had already been confirmed as the Marquis of Oxtail, and her grandson was likely to become the Marquis of Ironhoof Island. How could she not be in a good mood? Apart from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the two princesses, there was no one else in the Grand Duchy and the two princesses. Even the two princesses were not as good as this old madam. It was true that during the reign of the Grand Duchy, the princesses were revered. But once the crown prince succeeded the throne, the princesses were nothing more than two sisters who had already married. When the crown prince had his own descendants, the status of the princesses would be even lower. Estranged from generation to generation, the princesses would either integrate into the feudal lords or the blue-blood aristocrats. It would be impossible for them to continue to attach themselves to the Sapphire family. She ate a soft steamed egg and joked, "We have to pay attention to one thing. I'm afraid that many greater aristocrats will bring their daughters to visit the Coral Island." Indeed, this is a major event in List's life. Madame Marie followed up. Rolia also smiled and echoed, "Family background, appearance and conduct should be carefully investigated and considered. The most important thing is List's own choice." List just ate his dinner and did not respond to the three madams' worries about his marriage. He had no desire for aristocratic ladies. With his current status, he did not need to rely on marriage to strengthen himself. The Count knew of List's Dragon Knight identity. Therefore he was well aware of List's choice of marriage partner. He said, "You don't have to worry about this matter. No matter which young lady comes to visit, let List make his own decision, understand?" In his opinion, it was best for List, who had a dragon, to marry a princess to match his identity. The Dragon Knight, with his fighting strength at the top of the world, had always been the best choice for princesses. "You are now the Marquis of Oxtail. You have the final say in the Tulip family." Madame Penelope said indifferently, "You have always made your own decisions, and I have not seen you make any good choices." After saying that, he glanced at Madame Marie. His meaning was self-evident. Madame Marie continued to smile, as if she did not understand the subtext of Madame Penelope's words. In that case, after the banquet, the Count and List entered the study again to discuss in detail. "Since you have become a Dragon Knight, you must have had a dragon for a long time. When did it start?" "I found Leo on Black Horse Island. He is a growing young dragon, but as an elemental dragon he is very powerful. Basically, ever since I became a Sky Knight I've been training with Leo. That's why my strength has improved so much." "Leo is that fire dragon?" "Yes." "No wonder I lost to you so miserably in the actual combat drill." It seemed that because he had lost to the Dragon Knight, the Earl quickly got over the setback and could calmly talk about the fiasco. "I didn't expect the Tulip family to have a Dragon Knight." List smiled. "The knight's glory favors me." The Earl was silent for a moment and also smiled. "The knight's glory favors me." Then he asked sternly, "Leo is still a young dragon. What are your plans?" "The growth cycle of a dragon is measured in hundreds of years. I am exploring the Dragon Knight's training method. In fact, the best way is to get the Dragon Knight's Dochi secret book from the Grand Duke, so that I can refer to the first Grand Duke's training method and quickly improve my strength. Now I can only explore it independently and the progress is slow. The Grand Duke will never easily give away the Dragon Knight's Dochi secret book. I'm not counting on the Grand Duke. As long as he can tolerate me developing my strength steadily, I will leave the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and look for other overseas islands to build a country." "You want to go overseas to build a country?" "I can't overthrow the Sapphire family and rob the Grand Duchy of Sapphire to build a country. The Grand Duke did not abuse the Tulip family. I'm not willing to betray the Lord." Although the huge profits of war once drove List to the battlefield, the basic rules still need to be followed. The Sapphire family did not target the Tulip family, so the Grand Duke will always be the Count's lord. As a follower, betraying the Lord is already an immoral act that is despised. If he kills the Lord, his reputation will be completely ruined. Even if in the future people fear the strength of the dragon-raising family and dare not say it out loud, they will still insult the dragon-raising family behind their backs. It is not easy to build a country from scratch. At least it needs the support of the kingdom. I thought you would choose to build a country on the mainland. I prefer to develop on the island. Many people think that the island is desolate, but it is not difficult for me to develop on the island. It is not easy to develop a country. You must realize this, especially since the fire dragon is an elemental dragon. It does not help much in the production of resources. As long as List takes down the invisible dragon, there will be no shortage of resources. Even if there is only Leo, it is not really impossible to develop productivity. Father, I think the elemental dragon also has strong production potential. I have explored a lot about the use of the fire dragon. At present, the glass-making, charcoal calcination, bricks and pottery on Black Horse Island all use the power of the fire dragon. As long as there is more exploration, the power of the fire dragon is the driving force from agriculture to industry. After all, it is equivalent to unlimited energy. If steam engines, internal combustion engines, and the like can be developed, the Industrial Revolution may be set off at any time. However, the Industrial Revolution takes too much energy. Now List, as a Dragon Knight, enjoys the great power of the Dragon Knight and has little motivation to promote the Industrial Revolution. He wants to ride a dragon to explore this wonderful world and discover all the mysterious things. In this way, the father and son outline the future of List's country. However, no matter how beautiful the blueprint is, it has to be built step by step. At present, the most important thing is to ensure that List can develop steadily until the day of the founding of the country. Father, I'm not going to see the Grand Duke. I hope you can deal with the Grand Duke and dispel the Grand Duke's attempt to recruit me as a follower. Otherwise, even if the Grand Duke does not snatch Leo, the Dragon Knight of other kingdoms will launch a dragon-slaying war against me. It will be as bumpy as the founding of the first Grand Duke. You can rest assured that it is just a little bit of greed. I will tell the Grand Duke directly that I need you to help the Tulip family develop and gain a foothold on Ironhoof Island. At least for 10 years you do not need to be loyal to the Grand Duke. Is 10 years enough for you to develop to the point of self-protection? List nodded. It won't be long before I will shake the sea. 10 years is more than enough. Father, as long as I succeed in founding the country and separate from the family, the Tulip family will have the status of Marquis Bull in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. This is my promise. Nobles pay attention to etiquette. Even between father and son, after the separation of the family, interests must be the first priority. Chapter 664. The father and son talked for 2 hours in the study, then they called Levis in, and the father and son continued to talk for 2 hours. They mainly talked about material distribution, merit statistics, and other issues, including the follow-up work of the serf purchase, as well as all aspects of the Tulip family's entry into Ironhoof Island, Oxtail City. I will ask the Grand Duke for a 5-year harvest period. During these 5 years, Coral Island will still be ruled by the Tulip family. You have to hurry up with your plan. Black Horse Island may only have a 5-year harvest period. 5 years is enough. List understood. The Count could get him a 5-year harvest period on Black Horse Island and exemption from allegiance to the Grand Duke for 10 years, which was enough for him to arrange his own plan. Most importantly, Achi could be promoted to Magic Shooter at any time. Once Achi was promoted, then with the power of the Dragon Knight and Magic Shooter, there would be no need to fear the Dragon Slayer. The strength of a Magic Shooter could fight a dragon alone. Even if Achi was a little weaker, she could contain part of the Dragon Knight's combat power. List would be enough to deal with the rest. He had been using Alonso Cyclamen as an imaginary enemy. Alonso, as a Bronze Dragon Knight, a production-type metal dragon, may not be as strong as a Sapphire Dragon in its heyday. Leo could probably fight a Bronze Dragon in 2 years. The expression of confidence was always on his face, and his heart was full of confidence. Moreover, I have the smoke mission to help me grow, and my strength has skyrocketed. Midnight. Resting in Tulip Castle. Stroking the flame dragon pattern that Leo had turned into, illusory smoke floated in front of his eyes. Mission. You have obviously succeeded in riding a dragon and become a real Dragon Knight. You can roam the world's generals, but it is undeniable that Leo is still young, and the next step of training is still clueless. Please restrain your mood of showing off and explore the next step of training in a low-key manner. Reward, 1 Magic Shooter. The mission was not completed because he had not yet figured out the training method. The reason why he checked the mission was mainly to judge whether he was showing off by revealing the news of Leo to the Count. Now that he hadn't failed the mission, it wasn't like he was showing off. Although the Count is very shocked, my original intention is not to show off, but to plan for the future. When the Grand Duke officially calculates the military merits, the Count will be promoted to Marquis Oxtail, and the Tulip family will have a lot of arable land. I'm afraid that they will migrate a large number of Coral Island serfs to Ironhoof Island. The migration of serfs in Coral Island has led to a decline in population, which is bound to affect the commercial trade of Black Horse Island. Therefore, he had to make plans as soon as possible to buy more ships and develop his own shipbuilding industry to open up the sea trade channel. In the end, he had to build a large enough fleet to open up a new island country. It's time for Yevich to prepare the expedition fleet. Everyone was thinking about conquering the continent, conquering the sky, but only he was thinking about conquering the sea. Suddenly, he then thought of his grandfather, Marquis Merlin. I don't know how Marquis Merlin is doing. This time, the Taro family, as the main help in the fight for the iron ore, made a lot of contributions. Masiro's position should be stable. Unfortunately, my cousin's fertility problem is a problem. He had a good impression of Marquis Merlin. Back then he was looked down upon by the Tulip family, yet his grandfather attached great importance to him. This favor was worth repaying. Moreover, his relationship with his cousin Meopel was pretty good. If I have time, I should make a trip to Red Crab Island and meet Marquis Merlin. In passing, I should borrow the palace speedboat from the Taro family and see if I can research the three-masted sailboat technology. If the Taro family is unable to gain a foothold in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire in the future, I can take them to my country. In any case, he didn't want the Taro family's bloodline to be severed, and even more so, he didn't want to be replaced. At this point, he already had enough strength to prevent certain things from happening. Unfortunately, the custom of adoption is not popular in this world. If the aristocratic bloodline is severed, the fief will be taken back. If adoption is possible, then Levis and Relia should simply have another son, and then pass the son to cousin Meopel to inherit the Taro family's territory. In any case, he still planned to look for food and medicinal herbs that could increase male fertility and give them to Meopel. Early the next morning, the Count got up early and was ready to go. When Liszt got up, washed his face and ate breakfast, he kept pacing back and forth at the entrance of Tulip Castle, looking very restless. One couldn't blame him for acting like this because he had an appointment with Liszt. Today he would let him see the true form of Fire Dragon Leo. Dragon. The Count took a deep breath of the fragrance of tulip flowers. He wanted to calm down, but he couldn't calm down. Dragon. It is Liszt's dragon, which is equivalent to the Tulip family's dragon. Who would have thought that my son would be a dragon knight standing at the peak of the world? Not far away, several servants were leading the chocobo Loki for a stroll in the garden. In the past, every time he saw this seven-colored bird, he would be very envious. However, this time he didn't have the slightest conflict. It's just an uncommon World of Warcraft, nothing in front of a dragon. I don't know if Liszt can come across some more powerful World of Warcraft. When the time comes, I'll have him catch one for me. This small favor Liszt would definitely give him face. The Count suddenly found that his dream of many years had come true so easily. It's wonderful to have a dragon knight as a son. While he was waiting, his heart was about to burst into flames. Liszt finally finished his breakfast, walked out of Tulip Castle's entrance, greeted the Count, then mounted the chocobo Loki and galloped with the Count into the uninhabited wilderness. 2/3 of Coral Island's land had been opened up, but there was still 1/3 that hadn't been opened up. Half an hour later, they arrived at the foot of an undeveloped hill. This place is secluded enough that no one will find traces of a dragon. So, how are you going to call Leo over? The Count asked excitedly. Liszt smiled without saying a word. Instead, he stretched out his right arm, spread open his palm, and telepathically linked to the little fire dragon Leo. Leo, come out according to the way we planned. After getting Leo's response, he added a line for himself, come out, my partner Leo. Boom. Under the watchful gaze of the Count's widened pupils, flames rose from Liszt's arm. The flames didn't burn his clothes, but directly sprayed out, instantly burning half the sky red. Then came a majestic dragon roar from the flames. Roar. The next moment, the flames exploded, filling the sky with fire. When the flames were about to extinguish, a red and black dragon with a sinister appearance and a powerful beauty gradually revealed its perfectly curved figure. It was the 20-meter-long little fire dragon Leo. The outline of the flames gradually solidified, stepping on the flames that were about to extinguish. Holding his head high, he glanced at the Count with disdain, then turned his head away and looked at Liszt. Liszt seized the opportunity to grab one of its scales, mounted the dragon tooth platform, and shouted in high spirits, Father, in the entire Grand Duchy of Sapphire, I am the only true dragon knight. Chapter 665. Seeing the Count's envious and shocked eyes, Liszt was very proud. At this stage, his identity as a dragon knight could not be exposed, so he could only show off in front of the Count first. However, just as he was about to ride Leo into the sky, he suddenly remembered that his smoke mission required him to be low-key, so he restrained his desire to show off. In order to prevent the mission from failing, he could only resist the desire to go to the sky, walked down from Leo's back, and then signaled Leo to hurry back. Roar. Leo didn't move, but he turned into a huge ball of flame and surrounded Liszt. When the scorching flames dissipated, Liszt was standing in the same place, unscathed. Leo had turned back into the image of a flaming dragon and stayed on his chest, communicating with Liszt through the telepathic bond. The appearance fee is at least 10 potions. No problem, perform well and you will get your share of the potions, he responded in his heart. Then he faced the count and said lightly, "Father, I have taken back Leo. He does not like to perform at will. Although he is a young dragon, he still has the pride of a dragon. No one can drive him unless he has his approval." I understand. The Earl nodded in disappointment and then asked urgently, "So Leo has been living in your body all this time? This should be the magic of dragons. Their flesh and blood are indestructible, and they can turn into a mass of magic and attach themselves to the body of a knight." List did not say much. There were some secrets that he did not want to announce to the public, or it could be said that he had begun to consciously keep the dragon a secret, just like the dragon-raising families. The secret of the dragon was naturally in the hands of a few people, so it was safer. Otherwise, if all the knight in the world went to find a dragon, it would not be a mess, and it would directly shake the foundation of the dragon-raising families. The count also knew this, so he did not continue to ask questions, but changed the topic and asked, "Leo looks much smaller than the sapphire dragon. Can his combat power really compare to an adult sapphire dragon?" "There is definitely a difference, but the training methods of the Dragon Knight and the Dragon City Lord are different. The Dragon City Lord focuses more on snatching the dragon's lifespan and not on strength, while the Dragon Knight trains together with the dragon. A Region Lord is equivalent to 1 + 1 is less than 2, but a Dragon Knight is 1 + 1 is more than 2. It's good that you know what you're doing. When it's time to hide it, don't expose it. This is the foundation of the family's rise. Once the country is established, a fire dragon might be enough to protect the family for 1,000 years." I understand. In fact, I've never considered the Grand Duke and the Sapphire Dragon as my opponents. I believe that once they announce the establishment of a kingdom, there will definitely be a dragon-slaying war. These kingdoms will not allow more forces to divide their resources. Among them, the Golden Age Marquis Alonso Immortal is my most likely opponent in the dragon-slaying battle. I've also investigated Alonso. He rides an adult bronze dragon and is a dragon knight that the Eagle Kingdom has cultivated for more than a decade. However, it is said that the bronze dragon has experienced several generations of dragon knight and is in the prime of its life. Are you sure that Leo can catch up to it in a few years? Father, elemental dragons are different from metal dragons and gem dragons. They are naturally good at fighting. Moreover, Leo is only a juvenile, but he already has a wingspan of 20 meters. It won't take long for his body to surpass the bronze dragon. When Leo was born, his wingspan was about 10 meters, much smaller than the invisible dragon with a wingspan of 15 meters. However, a few months later, Leo's wingspan had reached 20 meters, and his body was much larger than the invisible dragon. After swallowing the dragons will left by the remains of the fire dragon, and then swallowing the dragons will accumulated in the volcano of the Isle of Dodo, his growth was rapid. According to the remains of the fire dragon on Black Horse Island, the wingspan of an adult fire dragon may reach more than 100 meters, which is one of the largest wingspans among all known dragons. List did not have much data on hand, but he still made a table to record the dragon's size data. Among them, the adult fire dragon has a wingspan of 100 meters, which is the largest known at present. The adult light dragon has a wingspan of about 80 meters, which was speculated by the Black Dragon Gang Paris. The adult white iron dragon has a wingspan of 60 meters, which Yevich Waterpeanut had come into contact with. The adult sapphire dragon has a wingspan of 50 meters, which List saw with his own eyes. The adult light emerald dragon has a wingspan of 45 meters, which Yevich had also come into contact with. The adult brass dragon has a wingspan of 30 meters, which Yevich had also come into contact with. Finally, there is the bronze dragon with a wingspan of about 30 meters, which vampires among the blood servants have heard from the Black Knight family pureblood. The data is a little crude, but it can be seen. The elemental dragon is the largest of the dragons, and the gem dragon is medium in size. Although there are white iron dragons with a wingspan of 60 meters among the metal dragons, most of them are bronze dragons and brass dragons with a wingspan of 30 meters. Body shape may not represent combat power. However, it often takes 2 or 3 dragon knight to kill a dragon. It can be seen that the strength of the elemental dragon is definitely higher than that of the metal dragons and elemental dragons. Of course, these are just my personal speculations. There is no theoretical data to support it, so it doesn't count. I will try to keep a low profile and not easily cause a conflict without being fully prepared. Although List was a little carried away, he did not lose his mind. The Dragon Knight can be trained. Other Dragon Knight have trained for more than 10 years. Even if the dragon's combat power is slightly weaker, it is enough to make up for the gap with training. Just like the Sky Knight has the levels of Ordinary, Sword Saint, and Perfection, If the Dragon Knight also has such levels, List, who has just ridden a dragon, will definitely be ravaged. Therefore, it is still necessary to follow the instructions of the smoke mission, restrain the mood of showing off, and keep a low profile to explore the training method. On the way back, the Count finally regained his usual calmness. It is not that he has never seen a dragon. Every time he goes to the Blue Dragon Island for a meeting, he has the opportunity to see the Sapphire Dragon. Therefore, the existence of a fire dragon does not bring much impact to him. The more impact is that this fire dragon belongs to his own son. Adjust your mentality. Soon he felt relieved. It was just that the way he looked at List was a bit different. Maybe one day he will surrender and swear allegiance to List. After returning to Tulip Castle, List did not stay long and directly said goodbye. There are a lot of things waiting for him to deal with in the territory, especially the distribution of military merits. He can exchange military merits in the form of materials, but his followers need military merits to be promoted. Becoming an aristocrat is the dream of every knight. You are busy, so I won't keep you for long. However, you have to come to grandmother's place and pick a potted plant to take back," said Madame Penelope. "When you went to Flower Town a few days ago, didn't you give me a potted plant?" "That was given a few days ago. Now, I have decided that every time you come to Tulip Castle, you will bring a potted plant back from me." "All right. There is no need to decline this kind of thing. Besides, he himself is looking forward to the old Madame's potted plant." On the balcony, the magic eyes patrolled around. Unfortunately, he did not find the light of magic retroaction, so he had to pick a potted plant that looked more luxuriant to take away. So be it. The Chocobo Loki returned to Flower Town in half an hour. The retainer knight who followed him were still wandering on the road, long accustomed to List's haste. As soon as he returned to his nameless castle, he received a report from the butler Carter. "Master, there was a chaotic battle in the wormhouse last night. Ella clashed with several sprites and planted the whole wormhouse with thorns and other plants. Finally, several Earth Knights were invited to suppress the riot." List was shocked. "Ella's all right? Are my sprites hurt?" Ella and the sprites only suffered some superficial injuries. Chapter 666. On the second floor of the castle, he saw that the walls were full of potholes, which were obviously traces of the elves' battle last night. The arrival of List was quickly sensed by the elves, so they climbed out of their boxes one after another and called out to List. Ella seemed to know that she had made a mistake. She lay on the edge of the box, looked at List pitifully and made a cry of grievance. "Wow." List ignored them and scolded them with a straight face. "Everyone, come over here and stand in a row on this table." "Go." "Wow." "Squeak." "Woola." The elves flew out of their respective rooms and came to the table designated by List. However, some touched each other in a friendly way and some glared at each other. The elves were different in color, appearance, personality, and temper. "Silence. Don't move." When the elves were completely subdued, List said to the butler Carter, "Mr. Carter, you identify who was the first to pick a fight last night, who was the one who started the fight, and who is responsible and who is less. Point them out one by one. Don't cover up. The elves are cute, but they really need to be taught a lesson." "Master, I will not cover up any elf." When Carter spoke, he looked at the thorn elf, Ella. Ella was glaring at him. But Carter was not threatened and directly pointed out, "All the fights were started by Ella." Ella yelled to stop Carter from snitching. "Wow." But List reached out and pressed his head directly, motioning Carter to continue. The first one to fight was Ella, followed by the gold thread elf. It not only fought with Ella but also pulled the other elves in. "Well." The gold thread elf yelled to express her grievance. Carter pointed out the responsibilities of each sprite one by one. Except for the corn sprite Mickey and a few other mild-tempered sprites, the other sprites all participated in the fight. After List understood, he glanced at the elves standing in a row on the table and finally fixed his eyes on Ella. "Jayla, you provoked, attacked, and continued to attack violently. You are the most responsible. You will be punished with a week of confinement. No, you will not be allowed to leave your box for a week. You must be confined." "Wow. If you dare to talk back, I'll extend your confinement time." "Whoa. Wow. Very good, 8 days of confinement." Ella opened her mouth and finally did not dare to make any more sounds. List continued to announce, "Gold thread sprite, attack, continue your violent attacks and make things worse. Responsibility is secondary. You will be punished with 5 days of confinement." The gold thread sprite had learned her lesson and did not make a sound. The other fighting elves were confined for 1 to 3 days. In this way the fight between the sprites was successfully resolved, and List's majesty was further consolidated. He believed that the punishment of confinement would make them remember, especially the grumpy Ella who needed a long memory, dealing with the affairs of Flower Town. Before going into seclusion to explore the Dragon Knight's practice method, List went to Port Town and gathered all his followers in the Knight Academy's Knight Square. A grand celebration ceremony was held in front of the townspeople. Whether it was a knight, a magician, or the best of other professions, they were invited to watch, and the new Knight Square was packed. In an office in the square office building, Marcus was waiting for List to check the list of merits. List trusted Marcus and List. He did not question the list but was ready to increase the reward. Being rich and willful, he did not mind sharing more profits with his followers. These followers would be an important team for his future country. "All right, I have seen the list. Is the ceremony in the square ready?" Paris, who was in charge of maintaining order, answered him, "My lord, everything is ready. We are waiting for you to announce the start of the ceremony." "Then let's go." When he led the crowd out of the office building, there was a loud applause in the square, and many people were shouting slogans such as my lord, Knight's glory, and so on. He had long been accustomed to this kind of noise. List walked to the rostrum without any reaction, stood in the center, glanced at the excited and crazy crowd, and stretched out his hand to press down. Suddenly, all the sounds disappeared, and only steady or rapid breathing was left on the scene. This was the authority of the Lord. A word and a gesture could control everything. Such a wonderful pleasure of power made List intoxicated and unable to extricate himself. "My subjects, welcome to the celebration ceremony of the expansion order." Suddenly the cheers sounded again, rolling like a tide, roaring for a full minute, and then completely silent when List stretched out his hand for the second time. "My followers, welcome to share the joy of victory with me. I hope that the glory of knights will always look after me, my followers, my territory, and all the things that are thriving in it." List said the second sentence. "My followers, welcome to share the joy of victory with me. I hope that the glory of knights will always look after me, my followers, my territory, and everything that is thriving in it." There was no time for the followers to cheer. He continued, 31 Knight of Black Horse Island died in this expansion order. They were close comrades, close partners, and loyal followers. They were the people of Black Horse Island and the Knight of Black Horse Island. We cannot forget what they have paid. Let us observe a minute of silence for them. A minute of silence, with only the faint sound of dogs barking in the distance. The silence was over. The celebration ceremony continued. List did not say any more polite nonsense. Instead, he took out the prepared list and read, "I said, the glory belongs to me, I am with you, and now is the time to share the glory with you. The following people on the list have been awarded the title of Lord Knight for their meritorious service." Oh! All the knight in the entire Knight Square were short of breath. Even though most of them knew that they did not have enough meritorious service, they were still excited. Marcus Wheel, the first name to be read was Marcus. List smiled and looked at his former home teacher, now the head of the Orders of Chivalry, and walked up to the rostrum with trembling steps. Then he knelt on one knee and performed the knight's loyalty etiquette. List nodded slightly and continued to read the list. Charles Trapp, the head of the security group who once wandered to Coral Island and voluntarily gave up his aristocratic status to follow List, was a wandering knight of the outer islands. After hearing the words, with tears in his eyes, he strode up to the rostrum, knelt on one knee beside Marcus, and performed the knight's loyalty etiquette. Then List continued to read the names of 7 knight, and the people on the rostrum had already knelt down. Then he read the last name, Griffin Haystack. This was one of the first knight to follow him. He was an orphan and just an ordinary Earth Knight. He was also the only ordinary Earth Knight in this title. Relying on the fearless spirit of the Knight's charge and the luck of the Knight's glory, he received meritorious service that was not inferior to the elite Earth Knight. So, Chapter 667. This chapter is a reward for the Alliance Master Xiao Ruizi's kitchen. It will be 1 chapter for now and 5 more chapters in the future. The celebration ceremony was undoubtedly a success. The conferment of the 10 Lord Knight ignited everyone's yearning for nobility, and the subsequent gold coins and material rewards of the Earth Knight made all civilians envious and students jealous. They wished they were the ones fighting on the battlefield. The knight and officials were also rewarded, but much less than the knight on the battlefield. It was this unbalanced reward that made all the knight yearn for the battlefield, ignoring the previous morning. After the ceremony was a banquet. On the eve of the banquet, List summoned the 10 Lord Knight to the conference hall of the administrative office. In the center of the hall was a huge 4 square meter sand table. The sand table drew a complete topographic map of Black Horse Island according to scale. The town, rivers, and roads on the island were clearly visible. Everyone, this is the sand table map of Black Horse Island. You have become Lord Knight, and I will reward you with land. From today on, you will all be lords with your own land. Most of the wastelands here are marked with red lines, and your fief will be chosen from here. The fief of a Lord Knight was generally based on villages and settlements. The 10 Lord Knight, including Marcus, all stared intently at the sand table map. List did not actually like the system of enfeoffment. The land could only be produced in his hands. If it was given to others, it would be difficult to set foot in it at will. However, he had already prepared for it. The era of Black Horse Island as a fief is coming to an end. As my father goes to Ironhoof Island to be promoted to Marquis, I will also follow him and go to Ironhoof Island to manage the new fief, so the fief of Black Horse Island is only a transition. The Lord Knight looked at List and listened. I will give you 2 options. One is to manage your own fief, which is no different from the previous aristocratic estates. The other is to hand over the land to my territorial officials for overall management, and get a harvest from the land income every year, eliminating the cumbersome management. The system he ultimately wanted to achieve was a system of empty titles. The knight would still enjoy the rights of the fief, but would not participate in the management. Just like the shareholders of a company, they don't hold meetings, don't vote, and don't ask what to do. When the time comes, they just wait for the dividends. Of course, it didn't matter if this system was boycotted. One day he would establish his own country. At that time, he would find a large island like the Blue Dragon Island as his family's property and leave the other uninhabited islands to the nobles to manage. Let's play our own games and see who's richer. However, the resistance he expected did not appear. All the Lord Knight chose the second option and handed over their territories to the territorial officials for unified management. They were not stupid and knew that following List's footsteps was far more important than a few fiefs. Moreover, Black Horse Island would be handed over sooner or later, and no matter how well it was managed, it would be difficult to pass it on to future generations. Most importantly, all the towns on Black Horse Island are not dirty and messy. On the contrary, they are well-equipped, clean and tidy, and far more livable than the countryside. These knights were used to living in the town, so they didn't care much about the countryside. After understanding the situation, List couldn't help but laugh. Sure enough, after living in the city for a long time, they don't want to go back to the countryside. People like to migrate from backward areas to developed areas, but migration from developed areas to backward areas is rare. The towns and cities of Black Horse Island are models of civilization, and everyone enjoys it. The celebration ceremony ended successfully. The atmosphere of the territory also showed a sense of prosperity with the birth of new nobles. The students of the Knight Academy did not need the supervision of their instructors. All of them seriously practiced the Knight class, fantasizing that one day it would be their turn to go to the battlefield and achieve military exploits that represented supreme glory. Everyone knew that their lord was the son of glory, the most dazzling aristocratic rising star of Sapphire. The Viscount was only a temporary transition, the Earl was easy to grasp, and there were rumors that even if it was a Marquis, List could easily be promoted. Strength represented future potential, and he was already recognized as the second strongest Sapphire Grand Duke, second only to the Grand Duke. The knight could not wait to practice 25 hours a day. The officials also worked hard. Compared to other territorial officials who could only go to the battlefield to make meritorious contributions, List said that the officials performed well in daily governance of the territory and could also make meritorious contributions. Without going to the battlefield, they could still make meritorious contributions and be promoted to nobility. How could the officials not work hard? In this way the day was over. The next day he took another day to patrol the territory. He went to the Magic Academy to inspect the work of the 3 great magicians, to inspect the practice of the blood servants, to inspect the learning of the twins Lucy and Ruth, and to exchange his latest research on the magic network with Chris Truth, in fact, Achi's latest research. Among all the spellcasters, Achi was undoubtedly the one List trusted the most, followed by Chris Truth. If possible, he hoped that Chris could also become a magic shooter, but he was afraid that it would be difficult. Chris's talent was much worse than Achi's. Then he went to the Knight Academy for a tour. He discussed with Yevich Peanut, who was temporarily the instructor of the Knight course, when to form an expedition fleet. He also visited the two Sky Knight captives Garcia and Fox, who were also part-time instructors. The ransom letter for the captives had been handed over, and it was time to see when Alonso would pay the ransom. Then he went to personally guide Emily in her practice. Emily was temporarily following the three Sky Knights, Garcia and Fox, to learn the Knight course. She was also practicing the Earth Codex, provided by List, and using scientific potions to increase her combat energy. The girl's talent was strong, and her diligence was even more frightening. It was almost like self-mutilation. Every day, apart from eating, drinking and sleeping, she spent the rest of her time practicing. A balance between work and rest is the best way to practice, Emily. Don't destroy your body, you need to relax. List touched the girl's head and said seriously. To Emily he had a fatherly, teacher-like attitude. He had watched this little slave girl practice step by step from an ordinary person to the elite Earth Knight she was today, and it only took her a little more than a year. But when he advised Emily to relax, he always felt a little embarrassed. He boasted that he was serious about his practice, but in comparison he was simply a synonym for laziness and lack of progress. Every day, apart from eating, drinking and sleeping, the rest of the time was used for enjoyment, and the real time for practice was only 2 or 3 hours. If the weather was bad or he was in a bad mood, he would only practice for half an hour. Emily shook her head and replied, "Sir, I must seize every second to make myself stronger as soon as possible. I hope I can become a Sky Knight before my period comes." Her period would come around the age of 14, and this year she was 12, which meant that there was still a year and a half left. List wanted to ask her if she knew what it meant to become a Sky Knight at 14, but in the end he did not ask. According to the rules of the Eagle Kingdom and the Steel Ridge Kingdom, Sky Knights before the age of 16 could join the Dragon Knight program. Chapter 668. After all, Emily's talent was strong, and she had enough willpower to diligently train. List had no reason to stop her. As long as a knight had enough nutrition, their body would recover very quickly. They wouldn't have the risk of becoming disabled after training too much like ordinary people. She could really become a Sky Knight. Then he would have the only female Sky Knight follower of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, which was a great honor. Moreover, everything she had was funded by List. That is to say, she completely belonged to List. Even if she became a noble in the future, she would still be a noble like the Blue Blood Alliance. The Blue Blood Alliance was the Sapphire family's private army, Orders of Chivalry. Maybe in the future, List would also form his own family's private army, the Burning Legion. As for why he had such an evil name, it was because he had a little fire dragon, Leo, who could burn endlessly. Naturally, it should be called the Burning Legion. And such a name gave him an inexplicable sense of pleasure as if he were the ultimate boss. All in all, Emily was a huge potential worth investing in. She and the twin magic apprentice sisters Lucy and Ruth were all targets of the smoke mission instructions. In List's view, it probably meant that the three of them had a hero template and would be strong heroes if cultivated well. He could not teach Lucy and Ruth magic knowledge, so he could only guide Emily in knight training. While he was immersed in teaching, many magic plants from the seaside villa in Flower Town and the magic plants from the Sun's Child civilization had been transported by ship to Black Horse Island and to the Magic Academy. Most of the research materials translated by a Chi were also transported along with the ship. Now, this batch of materials and these magic plants would be handed over to Chris Truth, who would arrange for the mages of the Magic Academy to tackle nature magic together. The 3 great mages under house arrest in the Magic Academy could also participate in this research, which List judged to be of little value. The growth rate of the magic plants was seriously not in line with expectations. It took a few years to mature and more than 10 years to produce a high yield. Even if the yield was high, it could not make up for the consumption of magic resources invested in the early stage. The conditions to release nature magic were very strict, especially the transformation-type nature magic, which required the bloodline of the Sun's Child to perform. Hence, while Achi was focused on researching the weave, List decided to hand over these magical plants and nature magic to the Magic Academy. Enriching the knowledge of mages would allow them to spend less time researching things that they shouldn't be researching. It would be a good thing if there was a breakthrough in nature magic. In short, the civilization of the Children of the Sun quickly attracted many mages led by Chris, and even vampires like Mary Dawn and Daybreak came to study nature magic. They mainly wanted to study the transformation of druids, which was similar to their bat transformation magic. Actually, for these magicians I should publish more research topics to help them become scholars. List knew that the sorcerers of the School of Magic were all focused on nature magic, so he had some new ideas. He had originally intended for Crazy to turn the Magic Academy into a technical academy, training workers who could only refine potions and create magical equipment. But now it seemed that perhaps by publishing some interesting research topics, the Magic Academy could really become a university that integrated production, study, and research. The mages of this world are too addicted to magic power itself, and the knight is focused on charging on the battlefield, ignoring the technical value of magic power itself. When he returned to Flower Town, he was still thinking about this question. Can I use magic power as a kind of energy source? Since I can make all kinds of magic equipment for combat and auxiliary purposes, why not use magic equipment for civilian use? For example, making a magic electric fan. But the storage of magic power is a problem. Magic power must be guided by a mage in order to form a powerful spell. Magic equipment and the like also required a knight and a mage to activate the magic array in it with magic power. In any case, this is an excellent idea. Later, let Crazy pay more attention to this aspect. It is said that in the heyday of the Moon Empire, it was possible to build a magic transmission array directly to the moon. If I let the mages study the transmission array, I wonder if they can succeed? They would probably study it until their heads turned white. The matters of the territory were settled. It would probably take a month or two to prepare for the promotion from Count to Marquis, so there was no need for List to worry about it. He received a letter from his cousin, Miopal. The letter congratulated him on becoming a powerful ghost blade, the second strongest person in the country, and thanked him for the aphrodisiac, vitality food and medicine he often sent. Finally, it mentioned that Marquis Merlin's health had improved. If conditions allowed, the Marquis would like to come to Black Horse Island to celebrate with him this year. List asked the servant to bring a pen and paper and quickly wrote a reply. The content of the letter was relatively simple, saying that he would take time to go to Red Crab Island in the near future. After writing the letter, he asked the retainer knight to send it to Tulip Castle. He then announced that he would be going into seclusion. Seclusion did not mean that he would not go out, but rather that he would decline social activities, throw off the affairs of the territory, and concentrate on eating, drinking, sleeping, and practicing. The main place for seclusion was the seaside villa. He was going to ask Achi to help him refer to the next step in the practice of the Dragon Knight. From the smoke mission, he could probably infer that the practice of riding a dragon was related to Achi's promotion to Archmage. There might be a great reference. Achi had also said before that the Knight was a small version of the Weave. If the real Weave was the internet, then the Knight itself might be a local area network. Achi, do you think that if the Knight's Weave expands infinitely, will it eventually become a Weave similar to the real Weave? He tried to inspire Achi. On Earth, the existence of GFW made the internet in China basically equivalent to a large local area network. But for most people, this large local area network was basically no different from the internet. Apart from not being able to browse foreign websites, it had all the necessary functions. The weak Knight's Weave was very weak, like a small local area network connected by several computers. But now that List was a Dragon Knight, the nature of the Weave should be very close to the real Weave, equivalent to the large local area network in China. Perhaps Achi could really touch the Weave if she thoroughly studied the operating principles of him as a Dragon Knight. Therefore, in the following period of time, he closely studied the secret of riding a dragon with Achi. He often went back and forth to the Dodo Island, released the little fire dragon Leo, and rode Leo according to Achi's arrangements to carry out various experiments. Although he had not figured out a new training method other than Dragon Demonic Chi refinement and Dragon Breath tempering, he was already very skilled in fighting on a dragon, especially when Leo's magic power was connected to his chi. The attack power released almost increased exponentially. A burning red sunset could burn half the sky red, a scorching sun stab could directly create a crater in the ground, and 3 arrows were even more powerful than missiles. Chapter 669. The autumn leaves turned yellow. In the blink of an eye, September had passed and October arrived. The cool weather swept the fallen leaves down. List, who had been training in seclusion for half a month, had improved his strength by leaps and bounds. The perfect high-level fire attribute combat energy had almost completely evolved into a higher level of dragon combat energy. Sooner or later, it would evolve into a dragon will level combat energy. At that time he felt that he could be like Leo, able to switch between the dragon will form and the flesh and blood form at will. Of course, whether this was true or not was unknown. This was just his guess. He had never seen any real Dragon Knight, nor had he received any information about the Dragon Knight's training, so he had no way to judge. Chi, how do you think I should grade the dragon combat energy? List asked the siren who was writing and drawing in a book. Chi raised her head and pondered for a moment. Brother, don't grade it for the time being. The information on the evolution of dragon combat energy is not enough. More data is needed to better grade it. Okay. List was a little regretful. He liked to set standards for things. He remembered that on Earth, first-rate companies set standards, second-rate companies set brands, and third-rate companies set products. He hoped that he could be a pioneer in setting standards, not a copycat. At least in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire he could be a pioneer. Then he asked, so, during this period of research did you find any clues about the Dragon Knight's training and the magic net? During this time he had been cooperating with Chi and did not use his brain much. He was more exploring the joint attack with Leo. Leo did not know magic. Fighting relied more on biting, hitting, breathing, and the most commonly used magic attack. These simple attacks were enough to crush a block. When it flapped its wings, the magic attack turned into endless flames that could burn everything within 100 meters of its body. Even when it released its dragon will, the surrounding area instantly turned into a land of magma. However, Leo was not willing to release the dragon will casually. The dragon will was a key factor in its growth, and it would take a long time to replenish it. When they reached adulthood, their dragon will would be abundant, and they would probably be able to cause underground magma to erupt. However, Leo's attack style belonged to the crude type. It was barbaric, primitive, and impulsive. It consumed a lot of energy and could only accomplish a small goal. What List needed to do was to use his own chi to guide and help Leo increase the efficiency of his attacks so that the human and dragon could work together perfectly. When Leo's attack power was no longer scattered but highly condensed, his strength naturally doubled. He believed that this was a brand new cultivation method and named it Dragon Power Focus. However, this method of concentrating dragon power did not gain the approval of the Smoke Mission, and the mission was still not completed. Since Dragon Power Focus was not recognized, List worked hard to develop a new training method. Using the spiritual harmony when riding a dragon and the long-distance spiritual connection when not riding a dragon, Yangling and Leo's spiritual power could be used to build a set of methods that involved blocking thoughts and information transmission. Similar to Morse code, it was a brand new form of communication, which was why it was named the Dragonheart Code. Unfortunately, the Smoke Mission still did not recognize the Dragonheart Code. List himself thought that whether it was Dragon Power Focus or Dragonheart Code, it was enough to be recorded in his List Dragon Knight Cultivation Manual, and passed down as an heirloom from generation to generation. Not surprisingly, this book was his latest work after the List Dragon Raising Manual. It was just that he hadn't started writing yet. These two cultivation methods were already the best answers that List could figure out in the near future. Unfortunately, the Smoke Mission did not recognize them, so he could only turn to Chi for help. He didn't have much hope. The research time was still too short, and there shouldn't be any progress so soon. However, Chi nodded and said, Brother, according to the resonance phenomenon you told me before plus Chi's research on magic arrays, there is already some progress. However, some experiments still need to be designed to verify Chi's ideas. If the ideas are correct, then Brother's Dragon Knight cultivation method can be determined. Is that so? List was overjoyed and said that his little siren was the best. Hurry up and tell me what the ideas are. It's the idea of resonance. Chi explained, Brother and Leo's chi and mind can be connected, but the frequency of the connection is not superimposed. If it can be superimposed to produce resonance, it should be able to produce a special effect. Brother and Leo can even assimilate each other in resonance. List understood the principle of resonance, but he was puzzled by another question. Assimilation? Assimilation between magic powers. Maybe Brother will soon be able to switch between the dragon will and the flesh and blood body at will like Leo. List breathed a sigh of relief. I thought you meant that Leo and I will become one and become half human and half dragon. No brother, I've never heard of a dragon knight and a dragon growing together. Well, then you design the experiment carefully and strive to get the results as soon as possible. I have a hunch that if this cultivation method is successful, you will also be promoted to a magic shooter. Chi said thoughtfully, maybe? If Brother can resonate with Leo, why can't Chi touch the magic net through resonance? Then she fell into deep thought. List did not want to disturb her. He quietly left the room and went to the pond worm room next door. The giant kelp sprite was floating comfortably on the water and sleeping. When it did not open its mouth, Parker was really beautiful, like a huge yellowish-brown gem. The giant kelp sprites next door were also sleeping, and they were all very beautiful. They were lucky that as sprites they also had their own names. The little elves who came later didn't even get a name. Especially the two water peanut sprites left by Yevich Water Peanut. They were both called water peanuts, and it was hard to tell who was right and who was wrong. With some jade powder every day, the two water peanuts could sleep soundly for a day, and they were easy to take care of. After looking at the sprites for a while, he got up and left the castle by the sea, returning to the unnamed castle. When he was about to eat and take a nap, the butler Carter reported to him, "Master, the white paper workshop has sent the latest white paper, and the box is already in the master's study. Let's go see." He entered the study. Opening the box, the butler Carter took out a stack of yellowish-gray paper with both hands, trembling slightly as if he was holding a rare treasure. Compared to the stinky and thick bast paper, these new types of paper were indeed rare treasures. But Liszt casually grabbed a few, touched them with his hands, and felt that they were very rough. He shook his head and said, "The quality is not up to standard. Tell Raveny of the white paper workshop to continue to improve the process, and don't try to fool me with a bunch of defective products. Also, directly burn this batch of white paper, leave not a single one." The white paper was still in the stage of confidentiality, and must not be leaked. The defective products were directly burned. His requirements for the paper workshop's products must be smooth and not rotten. He did not ask for the quality of rice paper, but it must not be too bad. After the white paper was made, he would further study toilet paper. Although it was comfortable to wipe the buttocks with cloth, it was still not good enough. Watching Carter personally throw all the paper into the fireplace to burn, Liszt suddenly thought of something and asked, "About the ransom of Garcia and Fox, has anyone from the Eagle Kingdom come to receive it?" "Not yet, master." Chapter 670. This chapter is dedicated to the leader, Ink Horizon, 1 chapter for the time being and 5 chapters in the future. Liszt had many doubts about Alonso's slowness, and the two Sky Knights, Garcia and Fox, were even more embarrassed. It was really embarrassing and disappointing that the Lord did not care about his followers. Moreover, the investigation news from the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom had been passed to Tulip Castle. When Liszt took people to capture Trapped Dragon Mountain, Alonso Cyclamen was in the northern border of the Eagle Kingdom, confronting the Dragon Knight of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, but there was no direct battle. About a week after Trapped Dragon Mountain was occupied, Alonso once again appeared on the battlefield. It was about a month ago. That is to say, Alonso may not have returned to Battering River Plain? Father thinks so too. It is possible that the news of the iron mine in Trapped Dragon Mountain was not spread at all, so Alonso did not know about it and did not make any movements. The one who answered was Levis. He had personally sent the news and asked Liszt some questions about cultivation. Levis was 6 years older than Liszt. He was 24 years old this year and was only one step away from becoming a Sky Knight. With Liszt's Earth Codex as a cultivation material, his progress to become a Sky Knight was relatively smooth, and he should be able to become a Sky Knight next year. The scene of 3 skies was about to become a reality. Forget it, regardless of whether Alonso pays the ransom or not. Brother, when will the family's fleet return? It should be soon. After the iron ore is delivered, it will be sent directly to help you buy serfs and food. We also rent about half of the fleet from my grandfather's family, and 1/3 of the fleet from my father-in-law's family. A total of 800 merchant ships for serf trade, and 1 trip is enough for your needs. Liszt's military merits were too generous this time, so he spent a lot of money to buy 10,000 tons of food and 40,000 serfs. As long as the food was enough, he had unlimited demand for serfs. After all, after the founding of the country, it was not easy to obtain a large number of serfs. The serfs of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire were obtained through trade. Many serfs came from either the Eagle Kingdom or the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. It was only after a few generations overseas that they were completely labeled as Sapphire. He had to stock up enough people for his future country. Not only did he have to hoard the population, but the Tulip family also had to do the same. The Count was about to be promoted to the ox-tailed Marquis, and the size of his fief had expanded by more than 10 times. How could he develop it without serfs? Fortunately, there were still a large number of serfs farming in the oxtail Marquis fief. When the time came, he would be able to obtain these serfs as long as he paid gold coins to the Grand Duke. He took a sip of tea. Liszt sighed with emotion. I hope the fleet will arrive soon. There are more and more territorial sprites, but there aren't enough serfs to farm. Cough cough. Levis was pretending to taste tea. Recently, many aristocrats of the Coral Island began to learn how to taste tea, which was gradually becoming popular. When he heard List's words, he choked on the tea and almost fainted. It took a lot of effort to suppress the sound of choking. List asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" Levis hurriedly waved his hand. "It's nothing, I just don't like the bitter taste of tea. I like sweets, desserts, and all sweet things." "I thought you had already accepted tea. If I had known earlier, I would have had the servants bring you milk tea. Now that everyone has started to drink tea, I would seem a bit out of place if I don't drink tea." Levis had no intention of talking about this topic. "By the way, before I set off, my father asked me to ask you when you can sort out the Sky manuscript. He is about to go to the Blue Dragon Island to accept the title promotion ceremony. He hopes to bring the manuscript with him to the Blue Dragon Island." Previously, List wrote the List's Earth manuscript, which became a family heirloom of the Tulip family. After that, when he chatted with the Count, he said that he had reached the peak of Chi and intended to write a book called List's Handbook of the Sky, to record the scientific training method of the Sky Knight. Even though his own training process of the Sky Knight was not scientific and relied on the dragon to cheat, this did not prevent him from summarizing the Chi perfection method. He had promised to give the List Sky manuscript to the Count for reference and help the Count reach the level of Sky Knight. Unfortunately, at this time he shook his head. "I have been busy recently, so I haven't continued writing the Sky manuscript. Tell my father not to worry. After he becomes a marquis and returns, I will probably be able to finish the manuscript." With so many books to write, there was no time to write. He felt a little sorry for the Count's ardent expectations. He then added, "However, I saw that the bloodline of father's horse wasn't good enough, so I decided to give father a black-blooded horse from the fine stallions I raised. When you go back, bring the black-blooded horse to father." Today, the black-blooded horse no longer needed to be strictly protected as a secret. He only needed to ensure that the bloodline of the black blood horse would not be spread out, just like the Sapphire family strictly guarded the bloodline of the blue blood horse. The Count was well aware of List's identity. He would not use this black blood horse for breeding. He would only use it to pay attention to ostentation. After all, his World of Warcraft breed leopard horse was too shabby. "Black blood horse, are you referring to those extraordinary dark horses?" Levis's eyes lit up. "List, my dear brother, can you also give me one?" List smiled slightly. Levis suddenly showed a bright smile. The next moment List said, "No." "Ah. The black blood horse is used to breed horses. You don't have to think about it for the time being. When the horse herd grows in the future, I will give you a few if you want." Okay. Levis could only accept it helplessly. Now, once List made a decision, it was like an iron law and no one could oppose it. Looking at his brother Levis's fake expression, List directly ignored it. "By the way, how is the effect of the calming bead I gave you as a birthday gift?" After the expansion order returned, he directly sent 3 calming beads to the Count, Levis, and his grandmother. "Very good. It's not hot during the day and not cold at night. We no longer have to worry about Richard freezing at night." "That's good. It's getting late. Are you going to stay here for the night?" "I have to go back directly." "Then hurry back with the black blood horse, or you won't get to Tulip Castle before dark." He didn't have much in common with Levis, so List simply urged him to go back. "I also have some urgent matters to deal with here in the territory, so I won't accompany you for an urgent chat." Just a moment ago, Steward Carter had reported to him that the cows in the Bampo cattle farm had begun to give birth. The calves that were given birth were not ordinary calves but Bampo cows, real dragon breeds. The hybrid piglets bred with estuarine pigs were already ready to be served on the dining table, but Bampo cows would have to wait a year or 2 before they could produce real dragon milk. Black blood horse, estuarine pigs and Bampo cows. Chapter 671. This chapter is the Spirit Gem Reward. Although he said he was inspecting the Bampo cattle farm, in fact, there was nothing to inspect. The cows that gave birth to calves were very healthy and so were the calves. List personally fed the cows a few bundles of hay as a consolation. Then he sent people to the estuary pig farm to slaughter a hybrid estuary pig. He wanted to eat a roast suckling pig at dinner. Standing on the hillside of the Black Horse Ranch, List looked at the black-blooded horses in the distance, with Lightning nestling beside him. He rarely rode this king of black-blooded horses. Most of the time, Lightning was leisurely being the king of horses, mating with any horse it wanted. The horses had given birth to many foals. With the herdsman taking care of these foals, none of them died and the herd was slowly expanding. Even larger was the hybrid horse herd. The foals landed one after another and there were already hundreds of them. When these foals grew up, they could arm the Black Horse Island orders of chivalry. Although their dragon blood was thin, they could still be called dragon horses, which were stronger than the World of Warcraft horses. Unfortunately, the invisible dragon only visits my territory about once a year. Otherwise, if it visited a few more times, there would probably be no shortage of dragon beasts in my territory. The reason why a dragon could infect dragon creatures was because of the magic in its blood. According to the Marquis Bull's Dragon Raising Handbook, the magic in its blood may originate from the boiling of blood. When a dragon was extremely excited, its blood would boil quickly, releasing the magic in its blood, thus infecting the surrounding creatures and forming a dragon creature. However, it was very difficult to make a dragon excited and reach a state similar to an orgasm in both body and mind. The invisible dragon's excitement was the smoke grass. A big meal of smoke grass could make it so excited that it couldn't control itself, thus releasing the magic in its blood to infect the Bampo cattle and estuary pigs. It could also produce some space gems. So far, List had obtained 4 space gems from the invisible dragon. However, perhaps the invisible dragon was still young, or perhaps it knew how to control itself. It only came once a year. Even with the smoke grass, it only came twice in total. If it frequented the place, not to mention dragon beasts, even space gems could be sold wholesale. Of course. He speculated in his List Dragon Taming Handbook that the magic of the dragon's bloodline infection could not be released at any time. It needed a long time to condense. That was why dragons did not get excited often. Once a year was probably a more normal frequency. Too much excitement might harm their bodies. Moreover, if it wasn't the most exciting part, the dragon might not even get excited once in his life. After List rode the dragon, he also tried to understand Leo's excitement through spiritual unity. However, Helio didn't understand this. Whether it was smoked grass, grilled steak, or thrown into the crater of a volcano, they could make him happy and make him laugh, but they couldn't make him excited. That was not what it was excited about. That was why even though Leo had been born for so long, he had never released the power of infection from his bloodline. As for how to make it excited, perhaps it would take a long time to figure it out. For reference, the Sapphire family, apart from the blue blood horse, they had never heard of any dragon species being bred. It could be speculated that after more than 150 years of exploration, the Sapphire family still hadn't mastered the excitement of the Sapphire dragon. As for the dragon beast, it was even rarer. In the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, apart from List, who had 2 low-level dragons, chocobos, have evolved, he didn't know if there was anyone else who had another dragon beast. As for the more advanced dragon, super dragon species in World of Warcraft, there was no evidence to prove whether they really existed or not, except for the phoenix feather. I don't know if it is possible to simulate the excitement of the dragon through artificial means so that the dragon is excited and releases the power of infection from its bloodline. Maybe this can also be regarded as a training method. Let's just call it dragon blood infection. Hee. List thought in boredom. Although he knew that this was not a real training method, he still called out the smoke mission. Sure enough, the smoke mission did not change. It still maintained the previously issued mission, to explore the next training method in a low-key manner. I hope Archer can verify the resonance theory as soon as possible. Leaving the Black Horse Ranch, List rode Lightning to the construction site of Thorn Castle. The foundation of the castle had been poured, and the first layer had begun to be laid. With rubber water as the solidifying material, the construction was effortless, but the hard work was the polishing of the details. The chief construction director, Jormea Rammed Earth, knew for whom he was building the castle. He personally participated in every step and made sure that the quality reached the highest standards. In fact, List wanted him to cut corners. After all, he didn't know who to sell Thorn Castle to in a few years. But in the end, he didn't say anything. In any case, this castle would be his home for the next few years. Even if he left Sapphire to build a country overseas in the future, this castle would still be the best place to see him. The apple sprite's worm stock had been placed in the planned apple paradise. Now many serfs were planting the autumn saplings, and in 2 years the apple paradise would be lush. Thomas, have someone catch a few fresh fish from the well and give them to the kitchen. I want to have fish soup for dinner. List ordered. Yes, master. Also, tell the kitchen to mix the mallard eggs and the flamingo eggs to make a plate of chicken fur. The chicken fur was a kind of abandoned worm stock. Since the flame mushroom trade, the production of the chicken fur had been rising steadily, and its growth was the most prosperous. The valet Thomas responded, "Yes, master." The mallard was a water element in World of Warcraft, the flamingo was a fire element in World of Warcraft, and the earth element chicken fur was a special taste when fried. After ordering the dinner, there was still some time before the banquet started. He thought about it and prepared to go to the wizard tower to see how the magic plants were being cultivated. Unexpectedly, when he passed by the night square, Alvin Eagle's word came over excitedly, "My lord." "What's the matter?" "I have thoroughly studied the ice seal skill of the dragon-slaying sword." List was delighted. The dragon-slaying sword spent most of its time studying the skill in Alvin's hands. "Is that so? Come tell me in detail." As the only Iron Knight in the territory, Alvin had his own office, workshop and house in the Knight Academy. He was also someone who couldn't bear the loneliness. He had already hooked up with a young lady and set a date for marriage, preparing to start a family. Of course, List was happy to see this happen. With the dragon-slaying sword in hand, he patiently listened to Alvin's continuous explanation. "My lord, you have already familiarized yourself with the ice twist skill. You can convert fire element chi into ice element chi at will. This is the prerequisite for the ice seal skill. Next, you only need to use the chi circulation frequency to activate the ice seal skill. The dragon-slaying sword can increase the frequency of chi circulation, thus blocking the chi resonance of the chi domain." It seemed complicated, but the principle was not. The chi domain was a method of chi resonance. It might require delicate and complicated operation, but the principle was still the chi resonance to form the domain. The ice seal skill of the Ice Soul dragon-slaying sword also had a set of complicated operating methods. However, the principle behind it was to rely on the frequency of the battle chi released to clash with the battle chi domain, and then use the ice battle chi to interfere with the resonance to achieve the effect of ice seal. With Alvin's guidance, List quickly grasped the method to use the ice seal skill. With the sword in hand, he circulated his chi. Soon, the crystal-clear blue sword let out a buzzing sound. Circles of bone-chilling chi spread from the blade, quickly sweeping through the surrounding space like waves. The movement was a little big, and it did cause the surrounding air to drop by several degrees. But the effect was unknown. There was no domain knight here to test his sword. So after using the ice seal skill a few times, he put away the dragon-slaying sword and thought to himself, "Sooner or later, I will have to participate in the expansion order. When the time comes to snatch Marquis Wildtail's chi domain, I can use him to test my sword." Chapter 672. The Ice Soul dragon-slaying sword was thoroughly studied, and List could hang it on his waist every day, but it was a bit awkward to have a blade without a scabbard. So the next task of Alvin Eagle's sword was to make a scabbard for the Ice Soul dragon-slaying sword. While playing with the Ice Soul dragon-slaying sword, List suddenly thought of the huge harpoon he brought back from the Temple of Fish Clown. The necro-ugly fish in it had not been studied yet. He immediately left the Knight Academy, found an open area by the sea, and took the harpoon out of the gem space. The 5-meter-long harpoon was directly inserted into the sand by the sea. Then List took out the soul storage jar and poured down the mouth of the teapot. Suddenly, a glowing smoke was poured out, and then the smoke formed the figure of a 36D girl. It was Virginia Truth, Curtis Truth's younger sister. I'm out again. Viscount List feels that we haven't seen each other for a long time." Virginia was used to living in the soul state. List smiled and said, "It's been a long time." As his strength grew, there were more and more mages in the territory, and his scientific research strength rose day by day. Virginia, who was just an ordinary mage, could play a less and less role, so he didn't bother to let her out often. He even planned to give her to a chief for research along with the soul storage jar. The purpose of summoning her today was to let her take a look at how to summon the necro-ugly fish out of the harpoon and make it a weapon to protect himself. He didn't care about the poor combat power of the necro-ugly fish, but the necro-ugly fish could still release advanced magic, which belonged to the level of a great mage. If it was fixed on his flagship, the Sunset, it would also have a good combat power to accompany and protect him when sailing the sea. If they encountered sea monsters or pirates, it might be very useful if they caught them off guard. Virginia, you are used to the soul state, so can you sense that there is also a powerful soul hidden in this harpoon? Virginia floated towards the harpoon, and her soul body passed through it. Then she said in surprise, "I feel a cold aura of death, but the soul power contained in the aura is very weak. Viscount List, can you tell me where this harpoon came from?" "From the ancient ruins, the Fish Clown Holy Temple. This harpoon hid a necro-fish clown. It guarded the Fish Clown Holy Temple, but I killed it. I feel that it's hiding in the harpoon, so I want to release it and see if I can control it to protect the ship. Is the undead fish ugly? Maybe I can activate it. Thank you. Are you sure you want to activate it here? It might still attack you. Don't be nervous. If I can destroy it once, I can destroy it twice. List smiled faintly. Although it wasn't him who killed it last time, it was a piece of cake for him to kill a spiritual fish clown on land. Virginia did not say anything else. The soul body directly touched the harpoon, and the next moment, the harpoon also glowed with the same light. Then, a green distorted shadow was projected from the harpoon, and then it turned into a 10-meter tall undead fish clown. However, compared to the ferocious first time, the undead fish clown this time was obviously dull. Is it not used to the land environment? Probably not. Virginia floated beside the undead fish clown like a little dot. Viscount List, I feel that when you first killed it, you severely damaged its soul, causing it to lose its basic consciousness. So, this undead fish clown is useless. Yes. It's a pity that such a huge harpoon was wasted. Probably no one can use it anymore. List shook his head slightly and said, Virginia, I'm going to attend the banquet now. You go back to the soul storage tank first. I'll chat with you again when I have time. However, Virginia did not move. Instead, she seemed to be hesitant to speak. List frowned and looked at her. She finally seemed to have made a decision. Viscount List, if you want to control the undead fish clown in this harpoon, maybe I can help. What help? I can use my soul to replace the soul of the undead fish clown. In this undead fish clown soul shadow, only the core is the soul, and the outside is some kind of power that I don't know. As long as I replace the core soul, I can control the entire undead fish clown. List was a little surprised, but then he said, if I'm not wrong, undead is different from souls. The undead includes the power of its life and is transformed into a soul state, but its soul itself is not strong. As you can see, the undead fish clown soul has been killed, but its power still exists. I see. So, are you really willing to replace the soul of the undead fish clown and become such an ugly undead monster? Virginia nodded seriously. Compared to staying in the soul storage tank and not knowing the passage of time, I prefer to be free. The undead fish clown is indeed very ugly, but for me in soul form, ugly and beautiful have no meaning at all. Viscount List, let me replace the undead fish clown and become a guardian. The soul of a 36D girl was about to become the soul of a 10-meter tall undead fish clown. The change of style might be a little sudden, but List had no reason to stop this. Instead of letting her be confined in the soul storage tank, it was better to let her have limited freedom in the form of the undead fish clown. Then I agree. Thank you very much for your generosity, Viscount List. Virginia bowed solemnly, and then her body resolutely flew toward the tall, stupid undead fish clown. She crashed into the green light, quickly found the broken soul and quickly merged with it. In the next second, the undead fish clown's body trembled. Then the light seemed to change slightly. The originally ugly and ferocious undead fish clown's face changed slightly, and there was a trace of expression similar to Virginia's. Another 15 minutes of silence. The undead fish clown slowly spoke. List? Intuition. The pronunciation was unclear and List couldn't hear it at all. However, the undead fish clown slightly adjusted, and when it spoke again, it was clearer. Viscount List, I have replaced the undead fish clown. How do you feel? Not bad. Compared to my previous state, there are some tangible feelings that I haven't felt for a long time. As she spoke, she reached out and grabbed the harpoon stuck in the ground. I merged with the broken memory of the undead fish clown. I feel that most of it is blank and only a few spells are left. Hearing this, List was interested. How is it different from the spells that humans release? There are some differences, but the general principle is the same, especially since these spells seem to be high-level spells. I've never experienced such a way of casting spells. No, I need some time to get used to it before I can release these spells. Virginia was just an ordinary mage when she was alive. She had never experienced a dynamic magic array, and she couldn't release advanced spells. You have enough time to get used to it and record the casting plan. However, can you always exist in this state? I don't think so. My soul is weakening, and I probably won't be able to support the body of the undead fish clown in half an hour. However, I can enter the harpoon and replenish my soul power. When I have enough, I can come out again. By the way, Viscount List, this harpoon is called Shredder Staff. Chapter 673. The Shredder Staff was put into the gem space. Interestingly, Virginia could still restore her soul power in the shredder staff, as if she would not be restricted by the stillness of the gem space. This made List feel that the stillness of the gem space was probably the stillness of everything on the material plane. It did not work on the non-material plane or the spiritual plane. As soon as a living thing entered the gem space, its soul would inevitably dissipate, and there was probably no suitable carrier that could carry it. Once there was a carrier like the soul storage jar and the shredder staff, it could survive. Perhaps on the day he rode the invisible dragon, he would be able to thoroughly understand the magic of the invisible dragon. Dinner. Enjoying the delicious roast suckling pig, the purebred estuarine pig could not be tasted. At present, it was only a hybrid estuarine pig, but the taste was several times better than that of ordinary pigs. The taste was delicate and mellow, and the sauce flavor of simple seasoning was matched with the meat of the estuarine suckling pig. Just smelling it would make one salivate, let alone eating it. At the same time, it was accompanied by fish soup from the well, 2 kinds of scrambled eggs from the mallard duck and the flamingo, plus other rich ingredients, which really made List's appetite. The value of the food eaten in one meal was probably higher than the consumption of ordinary civilians for a year or two. This was the luxury of being an aristocrat. The stronger the knight, the more food he needed every day. After all, the chi came from the knight himself, not from the free magic or the magic network. However, compared to other aristocratic lords who rely on exploiting civilians to survive, List mainly relies on business and development orders. The glass business has become popular throughout Sapphire and has spread to the Steel Ridge Kingdom. Flour, wine, and soap have also gradually expanded their sales range and are making money every day. When the future paper white is qualified, it will definitely set off a new sales climax. At that time, he is afraid that relying on glass and white paper will make him rich. As a dragon knight, he has enough strength to ensure a technical monopoly. As a monopoly business, it is natural to make huge profits. This kind of life is not in vain. After the dinner, enjoying several kinds of pastries made with bampo milk as desserts, List felt proud in his heart. Everyone has their own ambitions. Some people like to set off revolutions and unite the world. However, he didn't have such noble aspirations. Being able to protect the happiness of his subjects and then enjoy life and explore the world was his greatest pleasure. My previous small goal of riding a dragon has been achieved. Now, I will set another small goal, to build a nation within 10 years and become a truly independent lord. He had a goal. He felt even more motivated and a better life beckoning him. As for my long-term goal, I want to form a contract with a fairy dragon, become the lord of the dragon domain and share its lifespan. I'm not asking for much. I just want to live for a few hundred or 1,000 years and I'll be completely satisfied. In the past, he felt that 100 years was enough for him to live, so there was no need to seek longevity. But now he didn't think so. Enjoying such a beautiful life for only 100 years was too little. He didn't want to wait for a chi to become an adult only to have wrinkles on his forehead. The next day, List continued his seclusion, studying and training with a chi. When a chi was verifying the resonance principle of the magic net, there were a few unsolvable problems that she needed help with, so List asked her to write them out. Then he hurried to the mage tower with the problems and looked for crazy truth to solve them. 4 great wizards, 8 vampires, and several ordinary wizards were already a very luxurious lineup. No matter how smart a chi was, her knowledge was still too little, and she had almost no contact with humans. It was all through the magic books that List found her to understand the magic world. Naturally, in many aspects, she couldn't compare to the human wizards who traveled around. Crazy took the thick bast paper notebook and said, "Lord Viscount, I will arrange for the great wizards to lead the team to tackle these problems together." "Very good, solve these problems as soon as possible. I urgently need answers." List simply stayed in the mage tower and waited for the wizards to solve the problem. But what she didn't expect was that when Chris took the question to the 3 great magicians, they all replied, "Sorry, we don't have time." This was not the attitude that a captive should have. List immediately asked, "Crazy, what are they busy with?" "Recently they have been addicted to nature magic and can't extricate themselves. They spend all day around those magical plants and even discussed with Mary about collaborating on druid transformation magic," Crazy said helplessly. Once a wizard was addicted to a certain kind of research, their stubbornness was quite terrifying. List found the 3 great wizards and said seriously, "I don't care how much you like nature magic. Now solve these problems for me. If you solve them, you can continue to study nature magic. If you can't solve them, all the magical plants and materials will be confiscated." "Lord Viscount, our research is of epic-making significance. You shouldn't look down on nature magic like this. Yes, once we study the secret of the growth of magical plants, the world will no longer lack food. This is research with great strategic value. You should support our research. Druid transformation magic is also a powerful fighting force. It can even overcome the disadvantage of wizards not being able to go to the battlefield. List was expressionless. Solve my problem first, then study nature magic. For the truth we refuse. As long as the truth is not explained, we will not work for you for a moment. You can detain our bodies, but you can't detain our hearts that yearn for the truth. The three great wizards seemed to have a brain cramp. No matter how List threatened them, they would not budge unless List used force. However, he was not a person who advocated violence. He believed in his own charisma. If I say that there is a descendant of the sun's child in my territory, will you be willing to solve these problems for me? Ha! A descendant of the sun's child? A true caster of druid transformation magic? The three great wizards immediately put away their rascals and said excitedly, Lord Viscount, please tell us where the descendant of the sun's child is. You must understand that he is more important than anything in your territory. List looked at Crazy and then turned to the three great wizards. Solve the problem, and I will bring him here to cooperate with your research. Let me say this in advance, everything is voluntary. You are not allowed to force the other party, and you are not allowed to do any inhumane abuse. After all, old Phil was old and could not afford to be tossed around. It was possible to draw blood and so on, but it was obviously not suitable to be a guinea pig. Although the Lord had the power to kill and take away the lives of his subjects, List's morality did not allow him to hurt ordinary people who lived a normal life. After saying these words, he turned and left. Chapter 674. In order to get Phil, the descendant of the sun, the three great wizards had to work hard to study the problems raised by Chi. Crazy coordinated the overall situation. The magic research team still played a very important role. Even if Chi was promoted to a magic shooter in the future, she still needed a group of wizards to help her complete various detailed experiments. For the next 3 days, List did not have much to do except practice. He just contracted the peanut sprite, plus the oat sprite he contracted a few days ago. He currently had 64 sprite worms. I always feel that the number of sprite worms in the territory can't keep up with the pace of my expansion. There is no longer the speed of a sprite worm being born every few days. Could it be that the power of the smoke dragon's fate is too involved in the matter of riding the dragon, causing its influence to weaken? In fact, the birth rate of sprite worms on Black Horse Island was not slow at all. Most of the plants were planted in the first or second batch and may not have adapted to the local soil. However, List felt that it was slow. He felt that if he did not pick up a sprite worm a day, he would feel uncomfortable. It can be seen that it was easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. However, although he did not pick up many sprite worms, he did pick up a lot of pearls. In the sea near Stony Island, he pried open a few golden lip clams and found 4 good golden pearls. In the pearl lake of the Ringed Reef, he accidentally encountered a few black giant clams swimming from the deep sea. After preeing them open, he got a batch of satisfactory black pearls. Because he wanted to eat pink conch, he killed 2 of them. He did not expect to get a pink pearl. Golden pearls and pink pearls were very scarce, so he kept them all for his own use. The big black pearls were also kept, and the small ones were given to Luo Lia, who would sell them on his behalf. The profit was split 30 to 70. This time Luo Lia took 30% and List took 70%. It was not List who proposed more but Luo Lia who took the initiative. For this, List appreciated it very much. Compared to the greedy Levis, Luo Lia knew how to choose. Although the profits from the black pearls were no longer in his eyes, this move still made him feel comfortable because it meant that the other party respected his strength. What was the point of painstakingly cultivating to become a dragon knight? Wasn't it all for status and power? Levis married a good wife. Although his talent is SOSO and he is still an elite Earth Knight, he can be considered a winner in life. His father is about to become a marquis and will inherit the title sooner or later. His wife is of noble birth and is sensible. His son is healthy and cute. Most importantly, his brother is a dragon knight. October 11th. It was drizzling from the sky. Since the morning, Black Horse Harbor suddenly became lively. Countless ships were waiting to dock and enter the port, but the port was small and difficult to handle. Gort and other officials had to organize a group of ships and sail to another new port on Black Horse Island. These ships were used by the Tulip family to transport serfs and grain, and there were more than 500 of them. 200 of them were slave-transporting boats. Each boat carried 200 serfs for a total of 40,000 serfs. In this way, the number of people in the Black Horse Island territory will exceed the 100,000 mark. The other 300 were grain-transporting boats. Each boat carried 50 tons of grain, for a total of 15,000 tons of grain. These grains, combined with the production of the territory and the food purchased from nearby islands, were enough to maintain the normal rations of Black Horse Island for a year. List's flagship, the Sunset, also returned. After several voyages, this sewn and patched sky ship did not show any signs of damage. The rubber water combined with rock wood and thorny ironwood had a very good repair effect. However, after docking, the Sunset was immediately sent to the shipyard for a new round of repairs and remodeling. One was to renovate the cabin and equip it with some comfortable cabins for List's entourage to live in. The other was to equip the shredder staff. In the future, she would be incarnated as the ugly necromancer, Virginia Truth. She would use the Sunset as her new home, braving the wind and waves and escorting the voyage. List no longer put the shredder staff into the gem space, giving Virginia the freedom she wanted. Another thing was that the Sunset needed a new paint job. As the flagship of the Dragon Knight, it must be low-key and luxurious. Sir Viscount, I feel like I can do more things. Standing on the beach, the ugly necromancer, Virginia, looked at her illusory hands. There is a big difference between the undead and the soul. I just need to concentrate my mind and let my hands touch the real thing, she said, grabbing a boulder on the beach that was estimated to weigh a ton. The ugly necromancer was very powerful when he was alive. A few tons of objects can't stop me. List saw such a situation, and his eyes suddenly lit up. There is no doubt that the ugly necromancer who can grasp the real thing is equivalent to a giant laborer. It can do heavy work that humans can't do. Indeed, you can do a lot of things now. The most important thing is that the ugly necromancer can move freely in the sea. Virginia, the depth of the Black Horse Harbor and the new harbor are too shallow. I wonder if you can help me remove the gravel and silt from the seabed and dredge the depth of the harbor? I'm at your service, Sir Viscount. Virginia had a peaceful temperament. After being free, she was very grateful to List. She had changed from the initial Viscount List to Sir Viscount. The difference in address represented a different attitude. She considered herself as a subordinate. The more List looked at the ugly necromancer, the more satisfied he was. But then he sighed. Unfortunately, you can only control the ugly necromancer for half an hour. You can only come out for half an hour after resting for a day. This severely limits the effect of the ugly necromancer's body. Virginia's eyes also dimmed for a while. But she quickly recovered. It is already a great happiness to see the light for half an hour every day. List was infected by her optimism and smiled. I will organize the mages of the territory to study how to extend the existence of the undead. Maybe one day you can have half of the time to move freely, and the other half of the time to go back to sleep in the tearing staff. Virginia said happily, "Thank you, Sir Viscount." "You're welcome." List waved his hand, looking insignificant. In fact, the purpose of his proposal was to thank Virginia for sorting out the magic casting plan of the ugly necromancer 2 days ago. Secondly, the longer the ugly necromancer existed, the longer it could work. It was not easy to find a 10-meter-tall huge laborer, especially one in the water. Maybe with the power of the ugly necromancer, he could build a castle in the water. The temple of the ugly fish was obviously built by the ugly necromancer. So, in the next few days, the dockworkers and sailors working in the Black Horse port often saw turbid bubbles in the port for half an hour. Silt also rolled in, dyeing most of the port yellow. Some officials warned them in advance, so they were not too shocked. But there were still a few slogans like, "Praise the Lord," and "This is the place blessed by the night's glory." The movement was undoubtedly caused by Virginia's work in the water of the port. She dug away the gravel and silt and dug the port into a deep water port. The water depth was at least 10 meters, and any kind of large ship could freely enter and exit. And the width of the port was constantly expanding, and the number of ships that could be docked at the same time was constantly increasing. Chapter 675. This chapter is from today onwards. Unfortunately, the clownfish race had declined for some unknown reason, probably at the same time as the Moon Empire. Magicians also declined from that era. The reason for the decline was unknown. According to the subsequent rise of the night, List was one of the beneficiaries. If it was still the era of the Moon Empire's magicians, List would not be so free even if he became a dragon knight, suppressing the destiny of a country. As soon as the Black Horse Harbor was cleaned up, List received new good news. Under the overall command of Crazy, the mages of the Magic Academy successfully solved Achi's problem. It was said to be a problem, but in fact, it was difficult for Achi, a theoretical mage with knowledge but no practice. The three great sorcerers were very experienced. They quickly gave constructive suggestions and solved the problem in one go. List quickly sent the answers to the problems back to the seaside castle in Flower Town and handed them to Achi. Achi, these problems have been solved. How long will it take to complete the verification of the resonance theory? Brother, let me look at these answers first. A moment later, after reading the answers and writing on the thick bast paper, Achi raised her head and gave a positive answer. If there is no accident, in another 4 or 5 days, Achi will be able to crack the resonance theory and study the resonance training method of the Dragon Knight, brother. Very well, I am looking forward to it. Leaving the seaside castle, List found Old Phil of the leathersmith shop and promised a lot of money to get Old Phil to go to the Magic Academy to cooperate with the magicians to do some small experiments. In order to ensure that the magicians would not treat Old Phil like a lab rat, List personally followed. He would not allow the magicians to conduct experiments on living people at this stage. All research that violated human ethics would be stopped by him at this stage. Before turning the magicians into researchers, they must be taught to abide by the law. When he came to the Magic Academy with Old Phil, the three magicians were dumbfounded. Sir Viscount, the descendant of the sun you mentioned, is him an old man? What do you think? Sir Viscount, the old man is useless. Let his descendants come over to cooperate with the research. Old Phil took the initiative to say, Sir Magician, Old Phil has no descendants, sorry to disappoint you. You don't have descendants? Why don't you get married? Old Phil used to be too poor to get married. He got married recently, but I'm afraid Old Phil can no longer produce offspring. Old Phil was already married to the widow. The two of them had been together for a long time, but the widow's stomach had never moved. The widow had given birth before, so there was a high chance that Old Phil had lost his function. Great Magician Lars asked directly, You can't do it anymore? Old Phil smiled sheepishly. Mr. Mage, I just can't get my wife pregnant. That's easy. Let Scylla concoct a potion for you to increase the vitality of the little person. When you go back, work hard and try to give birth as soon as possible. But first, you have to cooperate with us to draw a few vials of blood. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was interested. List chose a quiet room and asked his servant to call Master Sylier over. Do you know how to make a potion that can make people pregnant? Lord Viscount, you may have misunderstood. I don't know how to concoct a pregnancy potion, but I can concoct a potion that can increase the vitality of a person. This kind of medicine targets the weakness of old men. It can greatly increase the vitality of the little person, but it does not include the ability to strengthen the sex drive. His meaning was simple. His potion could increase the activity of sperm. Of course, the humans here did not know that the substance contained in the vagina was sperm. Ordinary people might not know anything, only knowing that the union between a man and a woman could give birth. Some magicians who had studied this kind of content believed that the male vagina contained a tiny person. After the act of love, the person would run into the woman's stomach, and the woman's menstrual blood would gradually raise the person into a baby. Sylier was a supporter of this theory. I was once a magician who served an old noble. His son died on the battlefield and no one inherited the title. In order to not let the family bloodline be cut off, he entrusted me to research a potion that could increase the vitality of the little person, and finally succeeded in giving birth to a new son. He was talking about the little person. List directly understood it as sperm. He immediately said, Sylier, I want the formula for this potion. Write it down immediately and give it to me. I will convert it into your contribution and let you regain your freedom as soon as possible. He did not want it for himself but for his cousin to try it out. If it succeeded, it would be a hassle. There was no reason for Sylier not to do such a good thing. Very soon, the formula was written down, as well as the various details to pay attention to, densely covering several pages of paper. List just glanced at it and no longer paid attention to it. He would have his servant make a copy and send it to Meopal later. Old Phil was also lucky. Originally he was supposed to be a guinea pig, but in the blink of an eye, he had become an expert who would solve his infertility problem. Perhaps this was the impermanence of fate. Misfortune might be a blessing in disguise and a blessing in disguise. Behind a good thing there might be a hidden disaster, but there might also be another good thing waiting to descend. For List, with the smoke mission's power of fate, which was suspected to be the remnant of the smoke dragon, fate was no longer impermanent. Everything he had was a good thing. Under his influence, good things happened to the people around him. The Count was a good example. Under normal circumstances, he might stop at the status of Count for the rest of his life. However, the day after old Phil excitedly returned home to make the little person, the Count, who had gone to the Blue Dragon Island to accept the promotion to the title of Count, returned with glory as the Oxtail Marquis. The messenger knight arrived at the flower town. List immediately led his retainers and servants to the Tulip Castle. This was a major event of the family. When passing by the Coral City, he saw that the whole city was bustling with noise and excitement. All the commoners rushed to the streets, loudly shouting Tulip family, Oxtail Marquis, Sir Lord, Sir Marquis, Knight's glory favors and other festive slogans. Without a doubt, this was an event organized by the Coral City's officials to curry favor. Among the cheering crowd, many people shouted, Sir List, Sir Viscount, and other slogans, and even young Master List. List rode the chocobo Loki and galloped to the Tulip Castle in a few steps. Tulip flowers of various colors decorated the walls of the formerly tall and grayish-white castle, resembling a beautiful castle from a dream. Knight clad in mithril armor stood guard on both sides of the path up the mountain. Upon seeing List, they saluted one after another. At the gate of the Tulip Castle, List saw Lee William dressed in splendid attire. On his chest was a red tassel medal symbolizing the title of Marquis, and in his hand was a cane inlaid with sapphires. From now on he was no longer the Earl of Coral Island, but the Oxtail Marquis. His territory was located on the Ironhoof Islands Oxtail Territory. He was the lord of all the territories attached to the Oxtail City. He was the 7th Marquis of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. He was the lord of the high-spirited and upright Lee William. Chapter 676. My proud son List, you contributed a lot to my title. The Count, no, the Oxtail Marquis patted List on the shoulder. He did not have a father's majesty, only a father's love. In fact, his title of Marquis was all earned by List. Looking at the tall and handsome second son in front of him, he was full of emotions. When List was born, he had high hopes for him because of his resemblance to Melissa, hoping that he could surpass himself. As List grew up, his personality became more and more timid and eccentric, and his talent became more and more useless. This caused him to be disappointed, and he gradually showed indifference. Now, every step of List was earth-shattering. He was so shocked that he had to look at him at the same level or even look up. His second son was as handsome as ever, and his talent could be said to have changed dramatically. Everyone returned to the castle's living room. There was a place for the women to gather and chat. The living room was filled with the followers of the Marquis of Oxtail, led by 4 Viscounts: lifelong Viscount Levis, Viscount Eunice of Gravel City, Viscount Trick of Beer Island, and Viscount List of Black Horse Island. In his 20 years as an earl, Lee William did not obtain the followers of a Sky Knight, and none of his followers were promoted to Sky Knight. List was an exception. However, with him being conferred the title of Marquis of Oxtail, there may be Sky Knight following him in the future. I was promoted to Marquis of Oxtail because everyone worked together to fight for the glory for me. In 10 days I will hold a banquet to celebrate the promotion. At that time, the eldest prince and some of the country's nobles will come to congratulate me. During this time, all of you will send people to Oxtail with my officials to distribute your fiefs. Ironhoof Island was divided into 4. Obviously, the title of Marquis of Ironhoof Island could not be conferred, and no one would want the title of Marquis of Oxtail. Therefore, the Grand Duke divided the titles of Marquis of Oxtail, Marquis of Oxhorn, Marquis of Oxhoof, and Marquis of Ironhoof City. The territory of the Oxtail Marquis was called the Oxtail Territory. It governed 3 large cities, Oxtail City, and Oxrib City, as well as 10 small cities. Eunice and Trick did not have enough battle merits to be promoted to Earl, so they could only choose a small city. List did not even intend to choose a small city. He would leave here sooner or later. There was no need to spend effort to build other cities. Black Horse Island was enough for him to develop for many years. Once we have chosen our territory, we will proceed with the relocation. The Grand Duke gave me a 5-year harvest period. In other words, we have to move away from Coral Island within 5 years. Oxtail Marquis signaled for a squire to take out a map of Ironhoof Island. He said calmly, Ironhoof Island is divided into 4 parts, and Oxtail Hill needs to be rebuilt, but the benefits are obvious. More land, more trade. Also, Marquis Bull used to build a lot of things. The big guild will give me a discount. Apart from the fact that there were no elves farming and the master craftsmen were taken away by the Sapphire family, there were no other changes in Oxtail Hill. Even the serfs stayed in place to farm. Yunus and Trick looked at the map carefully, ready to determine the city they wanted first, and then carefully investigate. List held a teacup, leaned back in his chair and wandered leisurely. Oxtail Marquis got up and motioned for Levis to continue entertaining Trick and others. He pulled List to the window of the living room to ensure that the conversation was not overheard. I have discussed with the Grand Duke. 10 years were not enough. The Grand Duke only promised that you do not have to follow him for 7 years. Continue to follow me and help me gain a foothold on Ironhoof Island. 7 years is enough. By the way, the Grand Duke scolded me a few times for this issue, thinking that I am too selfish. The relationship between father and son should not hinder your progress. Oxtail Marquis was not angry at the Grand Duke's scolding, and his expression was relaxed. But I have tied a string with the eldest prince, implying that you will follow him directly after 7 years. What is the prince's attitude? The prince thinks highly of you and is naturally very happy about it. You should know that even if your identity cannot be exposed, you are still the second strongest person in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the inheritor of the Ghost Blade, a powerful existence that defeated a domain knight. List's lips curled up. The nonsense about the Ghost Blade had really fooled a bunch of people. What do the Grand Duke and the prince think about my legacy? The Grand Duke mentioned that the Sapphire family wants to buy the legacy, but I rejected it, so the Grand Duke did not mention it again. As for the prince, he intends to marry the Tulip family in the future. How? You want Richard to marry the first prince's daughter? The person he chose to marry is your son. But I don't have a son yet. You will have one sooner or later, won't you? That is a matter for the future. List had no thoughts of marriage or children right now. He was a person with the ambition to live a long life. Perhaps he would leave behind an heir to inherit the country he had painstakingly fought for due to political needs, but there was no such need at the moment. Life was to enjoy life freely and freely. Oxtail's celebration was set for 10 days later, so List only had a lunch at Tulip Castle and a simple chat before returning to his territory. 4 days later. In the study of the seaside villa, Oxtail was immersed in writing List's Handbook of the Sky. The Marquis had been anxiously waiting for this handbook, but he had delayed it again and again, unable to find the time to finish it. He had overestimated himself. Due to the fact that he had achieved full mastery from riding a dragon, there were many details of training that he did not know. Maybe I can go to Red Crab Island and have a chat with my grandfather. I can thoroughly understand the details of a full mastery Sky Knight's training. For now, let the Marquis wait for a while. He has waited for many years anyway, there is no rush. At this moment, Achi suddenly shouted, "Brother, I'm done." List was startled. He threw away the quill in his hand and ran straight to Achi's laboratory. Achi giggled as she held a piece of thick bast paper, her eyes filled with a praise-me expression. She passed the paper to List. "Brother, this is a training plan for the Dragon Knight based on the principle of resonance. The training process may be a little complicated, and you and Leo will need to work together to adjust each other's frequencies to complete the resonance. Don't worry, I may be weaker than you in theoretical research, but actual combat is my forte." List took the thick bast paper and ruffled Achi's hair. He focused his attention on the training plan for the Dragon Knight. Chapter 677. The smoke mission made List raise his head slightly. Looking at Achi, who was immersed in deep thought in the distance, he knew that Achi must have learned something while studying the Dragon Knight's practice method, and the next step would be to touch the magic net. He had no good suggestions on how to touch the magic net, so he did not bother Achi. Then the smoke mission released a new mission. Mission: you may have ignored the Black Dragon Paris for a long time, but now that you have become a Dragon Knight, you have a deep understanding of the dragon's power, and you have the ability to use the dragon's power to fight and practice. Why not help Paris remove the erosion of the light dragon's magic and restore her normal body? Reward: Paris's path of practice. List suddenly blushed with shame. I almost forgot that I have to solve the problem of the light dragon's magic erosion for Paris. It stands to reason that the light dragon and the fire dragon are both elemental dragons. The light dragon can create a special existence like the dragon, and the fire dragon should be able to do the same. Just in time to determine the transformation method of the dragon with Paris. There has never been a dragon among humans. Because the dragon's power corrodes everything, This corrosive power is called White Dragon by the magicians. Those who are eroded will die, and through a certain ritual can be transformed into a white dragon, in the state of a ghost. List believes that the white dragon should be similar to the undead fish, a kind of undead. In addition to the white dragon, the transformation of the power of the white dragon can also form the black dragon, which is Paris's current state. At the beginning, the court magician of the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf hoped to transform Paris and other mice into white dragons, but a thief stole the notebook and came up with a way to reverse it. Voluntarily dedicating everything to become a living white dragon, they succeeded in doing this and began to call themselves the Black Dragon. Although they retain their human bodies, they will be eroded by the power of the light dragon for a long time, and eventually become a part of the light dragon's magic. Now what List has to do is to remove the power of the light dragon and restore Paris's original body. But wait until I learn the new practice method of the Dragon Knight, and then try to help Paris recover. List waved the smoke mission away and continued to read. When all the content was digested and absorbed, he got up and left the seaside villa. Riding the chocobo, Loki ran to a wilderness and called out the little fire dragon Leo. Leo, we're going to start a new practice method. Are you ready? Roar. Very well, let's begin. He leaped up and landed on Leo's dragon tooth platform. In an instant, their hearts and souls became one, and they synchronized harmoniously. Then, a man and a dragon began to fly across the horizon. With List as the guide, he began to use the resonance between his spirit and mana. Resonance was just a metaphor. This kind of training method was on a completely different level from true physical resonance. List preferred to call it Dragon Knight Resonance, and recorded it in the List Dragon Knight Training Manual. It became a new cultivation method after Demonic Dragon Chi Refinement, Dragon Breath Tempering, Dragon Power Focus, Dragon Heart Code, and Dragon Blood Infection. The progress was much faster than List had expected. He originally thought that this kind of training method that involved the mind and magic power would be very difficult. After all, a small mistake in the mind would cause the operation of magic power to go very wrong. However, perhaps it was the powerful effect of the enigmatic dragon fruit that erased Leo's evil thoughts, leaving only pure thoughts. It was not difficult for List to guide him. Leo was like a blank piece of paper, allowing List to paint freely. That's it, Leo. Keep it up. The human and dragon spirit frequency quickly fused, as if there was strength in each other, and their thoughts were synchronized. And with the help of the fusion of the spirit, Leo's magic power and List's chi also became one. At this moment, he was like a missing piece of a puzzle that was pieced together at the special position of the Dragon Fang platform to complete the magic power circulation of the fire dragon. The moment the circulation was completed, List suddenly felt that he had become a dragon. His wings were flapping vigorously, and the wind whistled in his ears. His vision also became the fire dragon's vision. The world that he saw through the dragon's eyes was far brighter and more colorful than what humans could see. If his field of vision was HD in the past, then Leo's field of vision was 4K UHD. Not only could he see such a clear and colorful new world, but he could even vaguely see the floating magic power in the air. There was a faint blue and white glow above the sea, a faint grayish-yellow glow on the mountains, and a faint green glow when the wind flowed. List was completely immersed in it, so much so that he quietly activated the Chi secret technique, Magic Eye. Something unexpected happened. He clearly activated the Magic Eye in the dragon's vision, and the world suddenly showed a different appearance. Everything was made of magic power. Unlike the rough magic world that he could observe, the world in his eyes now only had magic power. Be it matter itself or magic power, they were all outlined in the form of magic power. The sea was the flow of water magic power. The thick magic power was the sea itself, and the light magic power was the magic power in the sea. The light magic power was in the form of particles, and it slowly flowed in the thick, solid sea water. The light magic power seemed to be slightly precipitating into the solid sea water, and the solid sea water was also slowly releasing the light magic power. So, there is no strict boundary between the floating magic power and the real world, and it is constantly changing. So, the release of magic power is to speed up the transformation process? Whoosh! Flapping his wings hard, List directly rushed into the clouds, and the clouds surrounded him. The clouds contained wind magic power, water magic power, and of course there was more chaos magic power. Everything was dynamic and constantly changing, including between the wind magic power and the water magic power. Through the magical eyes of the dragon and the powerful effect of the Magic Eye, he observed that when the water magic power followed the body of the fire dragon, There was a small amount of water magic power, and the light directly changed into the light of the wind magic power. What makes them change their nature at will? Maybe it is not the magic power itself, but the movement of the magic power that makes them change their nature? List had a sudden realization, as if an apple had hit his head. Then why does the knight's chi have different nature? Maybe at the beginning the low-level chi does not have obvious movement, and the higher the level of the chi the greater the movement ability? Even the high-level chi of the Sky Knight could already fly in the air because of excessive movement. He lowered his head. What he saw was Leo's claws, or rather his own claws. The claws were made of red fire magic power. Then what kind of powerful movement ability does the magic power of the dragon, especially the dragon's will? Unfortunately, before he could figure it out, Chapter 678. The 10 minutes of Dragon Rider resonance made List feel that there was too much magic and inconceivable. It turned out that magic was everywhere in this world and all matter was made of magic. This was a fundamental rejection of the world he originally knew. However, the matter transformed by magic retained a certain amount of the physical laws of the material world, which was why he was able to discover many familiar phenomena. Cold and heat, oceans and mountains, thunder and rain, plants, animals, and even the movement of the sun, moon, and stars were all like Earth. After exiting the Dragon Rider resonance, he felt very tired. Leo was also a bit tired, mainly on a spiritual level. His body, however, was still healthy and full of energy. However, this did not stop List from continuing to ride Leo in the sky while slowly thinking. According to the physics of Earth, the faster the particles move, the higher the temperature, and the higher the temperature, the faster the particles move. In other words, the particle movement is the temperature on the microscopic level, and the temperature is the particle movement on the macroscopic level. Regardless of whether it was the laws of Earth or this world's triangular theory of magic, matter, and spirit, they were all interconnected and could be used for reference. After all, there were too many similarities between the external appearances of the two worlds. What he had more knowledge from Earth than the natives of this world was the knowledge from Earth. Then, the surrounding movement of magic particles, whether it is represented by magic, chi, and other phenomena formed by magic. Forget it, it's a bit of a headache. I'll just describe this content to a chi and let her think about it. Not getting into a dead end had always been his strong point. After getting rid of these complicated thoughts, his mood immediately became much more relaxed, and he enjoyed the coolness of riding a dragon. I'll rest for a bit and see when I can enter the Dragon Rider resonance again. He took out a few potions and drank them on the spot. There was no difference between him and Leo when he drank potions while riding a dragon. His chi and magic were already like milk and water. The Dragon Rider resonance is a type of training method, but the state I'm in can be described as Dragon Rider mode. When riding a dragon normally, he could use dragon power focus and other methods to display the powerful fighting strength of a dragon knight. However, this type of fighting method was still man and dragon fighting separately, at most mutually reinforcing each other. However, after entering the Dragon Rider mode, the man and dragon would be highly integrated, and there would be no difference between them, so their fighting strength would definitely increase greatly. I can even use the Magic Eye secret technique on Leo. Is it because of Leo's magic circulation method, or is it because the Dragon Rider mode simulates the effect of chi? Or is it that the Magic Eye is still being used by me, but because of the Dragon Rider resonance, the effects are amplified? Whether it was for the former reason or the latter reason, it didn't matter. This was a huge surprise. Since I can use Magic Eyes, does it mean that I can also use aura attenuation? If he had the aura attenuation secret technique, would it be able to reduce Leo's energy consumption? Also, can I use the red sun rising fire, with Leo's help? These were all waiting for him to verify. Above the blue sky and white clouds, a man and a dragon drank pills while waiting for their spirits to recover. List could feel how powerful the Dragon Rider mode was, and Leo was similarly attracted by the miraculous experience of this mode. All of them were so excited that they couldn't contain themselves. Just as List and Leo were enjoying themselves in the sky, the little siren, a chi, was sitting in the room, thinking quietly. Nami, the mangrove elf, who she hadn't seen for many days, was sitting on her shoulder, holding a piece of peanut nougat. Nami, as one of the few elves who was sociable and liked to work, could proudly claim that every piece of candy she ate was earned through her hard work. Not only was she responsible for taking care of the little mallards in the mangrove forest of Mangrove Island and the mangrove forest of the estuary, but she also often went to the mangrove forest of Seagull Island to take care of the flamingos. Even with the large number of serfs involved and the introduction of artificial incubation mechanisms for mallard eggs and flamingo eggs, Nami still had to constantly sow mangrove saplings to maintain the normal development of the mangrove forest. There was no such thing as this cute elf. List's favorite mallard eggs and flamingo eggs would not be so easy to eat. Chirp. Nami finished eating a peanut nougat and let out a comfortable chirp. She did not dare to speak too loudly for fear of disturbing Achi, who was in deep thought. But at this moment, she suddenly found that Achi stretched out her right hand and seemed to be staring at her flawless white palm. However, the next moment, her slender fingers bloomed with a faint blue-white light. Following that, the pure white color of his flesh and blood quietly faded away. Instead, it was replaced by a light blue transparent color. Then her entire hand withdrew its flesh color, as if it had become a blue-white crystal. Chirp. Nami nervously flew up and flew in front of Achi, wanting to remind Achi what happened to her hand. But feeling Achi's calm mood, she could not speak and just slowly hovered in front of Achi. Watching Achi's hand withdraw its flesh color, followed by her entire arm. Then half of her body, her chest and abdomen all faded. Then her buttocks and legs, the original seawater below her ankles also blended into this fading, until the entire shell completely faded. In the end, Achi's neck also began to fade, and her entire body below her head turned into a blue-white crystal-like state. At this time, Achi raised her head and seemed to notice Nami's concerned expression. She returned a slight smile. In the next second, her entire body faded from the shell to her hair, turning into a blue-white crystal. This blue-white crystal did not last long, gradually fading, and finally her entire body seemed to evaporate, disappearing without a trace under Nami's gaze. Chirp. 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 Nami could feel Achi's existence through telepathy, but Achi could not find her. With her limited intelligence, she could not understand this situation and could only shout in panic. Suddenly, Achi's voice sounded in Nami's ear. Nami, don't worry, Achi is just using the weave to reshape her body. You know, the weave is really amazing, it can transform Achi into the most basic magic element. In a moment, the Achi that appears in front of you will be a new Achi. Chirp. Nami turned her head to look for Achi, but still could not find her. However, Achi's voice did not stop. Do you know that after Achi touches the weave and uses it to reshape her body, the first thing she has to do is to take off her shell? Although the shell is very good, Big Brother has always felt that it is a hindrance, and so does Achi. Nami felt that the shell was good and did not want Achi to throw it away. Chirp. Achi, who was reshaping her body in the weave, immediately laughed. Of course not, Achi's shell is a part of her body. It is like Urel's worm stalk. Achi can already store it in her body and she can also release it. It is like a magical equipment, protecting Achi at all times. As she spoke, the air in front of Nami rippled like water, and then faint blue-white lines continued to superimpose, soon outlining a huge scallop with a diameter of 3 meters. When the blue-white lines gradually filled every trace of the shell, the color gradually solidified into white. It was the large shell that Achi had been using before. Chapter 679. This chapter is detached and will be updated with more information. The big shell fell on the floor of the house and Nami flew up trying to call Achi out. But the shell didn't open. Just above the shell, a ripple-like wrinkle appeared in the air, followed by countless blue and white lines, gradually outlining the outline of Achi. This time, Achi's legs were no longer water belts below her ankles but real feet. A pair of small and delicate feet. Achi was only 1.5 meters tall and her figure was slender, but her curves were perfect. The biggest difference from humans was that her ears had transparent fin-shaped auricles diagonally upward, and there were 2 transparent fins like wings on her shoulder blades. Other than that, there was no difference. In this way, the blue and white crystal was gradually outlined from the blue lines, and then the crystal gradually colored, restoring Achi's former snow-white and tender skin. A few strands of water belts were still wrapped around the key parts, blocking the key points that people were eager to explore, leaving only the beauty of the combination of innocence and temptation. Chirp. Nami was very happy her siren sister was back. The brand new Achi's feet slowly landed on the shell. This was the first time she stood up on the ground and she couldn't help but look down at her feet, the snow-white instep, cute toes and crystal fingernails. She thought it would take more than 10 years to grow out her feet, but now with the power of the magic net, she had completed the reconstruction of her feet. She was very satisfied with this change. A siren without feet couldn't walk on the ground. With a pair of feet, she could accompany List, explore many beautiful sceneries and live on land. This was the life she had been longing for the past 2 years, and today it finally came true. It made her feel far more excited than advancing to magic shooter. She stretched out her hand and motioned Nami to stand up. Achi waved her hand again, and the shell under her feet quickly shrank until it shrank to the size of a matchbox and fell into her other palm. Nami flew over curiously, picked up the shell and laughed. Chirp. I'll let you play with it later. Chirp. Nami obediently let go, and Achi gently picked up the shell and clipped it to her blue hair, like a small and delicate hairpin. The hose was attached to the shell hairpin. Nami, let's go to the sea. Achi can't wait to try the power of a magic shooter. Big Brother has already become a dragon knight. Achi can't fall too far behind Big Brother. A high mage can definitely help Big Brother accomplish his small goal of establishing a nation. Without the shells, Achi still swam fast. Especially when her body was faintly glowing with bluish-white light, it was as if she had instantly merged with the seawater. Every time she moved her feet, she would appear in another place dozens of meters away. Lolth, the rainbow whale, wanted to follow her, but Achi shook her off after a few seconds. It could only chirp and chirp as it returned to the castle by the sea. There was a pool specially built for it on the beach, where it could enjoy the most delicious silver-striped fish. In the canal connected to the sea in Thorn Castle, it could also enjoy the delicious fish in the well, which was fed by specialized staff. Unknowingly, after a few breaths, Achi had already left the coral island and arrived at the waters near the ringed reef. He plucked the shell from his hair and tossed it onto the surface of the sea. In an instant it turned into a giant scallop. Then he released Nami from his hand and motioned Nami to stay in the shell. She quietly stood on the surface of the sea. Wherever there was seawater, she could stand as if she was standing on flat ground. With a gentle wave of his hand, he immediately cast a high-level magic water spiral fusion. In the next second, the distant sea exploded and set off huge waves. Just this casual attack was dozens of times more powerful than the water spiral fusion released before. The most important thing was that there was almost no magic consumption. Achi could sense the existence of the magic net at any time and anywhere, and use magic from the magic net to replenish the consumption. In other words, her magic was almost limitless. After several experiments, she felt that even the most basic water arrow was enough to exert the power of high-level magic in her hands. Ever since she touched the magic net and elementalized and reshaped her body, she felt that the magic in her body had changed qualitatively and was no longer ordinary magic. Is it the extreme nature magic that Big Brother mentioned, similar to the magic of Dragon Will? Achi shook her head. It didn't seem like it, but the specific situation needed further research. So, the sea around the atoll was affected. Due to the limitations of her body, it was difficult for Achi to cast spells of other elements other than water magic. However, she had mastered many water magic spells, including many of her own, and the Necrofish Ugly Devil spell that Virginia had recorded. She could cast it for more than 10 minutes without stopping. After bombarding the water magic for a full 2 hours, Achi smiled with satisfaction. She had collected enough information to complete the verification of the magic net after the elementalization. Then, she continued to experiment with her natural ability. As a siren, she had the ability to control seawater. After the elementalization, this ability did not disappear. On the contrary, it was greatly improved. The seawater under Achi's feet swirled and slowly rose, lifting her up. As the seawater continued to rise, it was as if a waterspout rose from the sea. The waterspout rose to a height of 100 meters before it reached Achi's limit. She stretched out her hand and pointed, and the waterspout quickly tilted forward. Next, she was like a water flyer. The waterspout lifted her in all kinds of fancy ways, making her fly around. Then he continued to control new waterspouts. He could control 10 waterspouts at a maximum. These waterspouts kept rolling on the sea, stirring up the sea. The whole sea was like a tsunami, one wave higher than the other, roaring and spreading around. My brother said that magic shooters can fight with dragons alone. Achi feels that she now has the ability to compete with dragons. Although I can only release water magic, it is really powerful in the sea. Achi clenched her fist, and suddenly all the waterspouts exploded in an instant, and the sky was filled with raindrops. Enough playing. She experimented with her new ability. She picked up Nami again, put away her shell hairpin, and returned to the seaside castle in a few breaths like a swan in the sea. Achi's speed before was 100 kilometers per hour, but now it was probably close to 500 or 600 kilometers per hour. Setting off from Coral Island to the mainland, it would only take 2 or 3 hours to truly swim in the sea unfettered. Except for the elemental water dragons, there was nothing in the sea that could threaten her. Even the water dragons might not be able to hurt her. This speed alone was not something that any creature could catch up with. Back in her laboratory, Achi tried to calm down from the excitement of playing. After a few deep breaths, she regained her tranquil temperament. She began to write and draw on thick bast paper at her desk. A pair of small white feet stepped in the water. It seemed that she did not know where to put them. She stepped on the left, stepped on the right, and stepped on the top of her feet. Chapter 680. Boom. The little fire dragon Leo's body twisted and spun in the air, instantly releasing a scorching sun stab, which came from the high-level battle energy secret manual Red Sun Rising Flames. When List and Leo entered the Dragon Knight mode, he quickly discovered that Magic Eye, Aura Decay, and Red Sun Rising Flames could all be used on Leo, or to be precise, using the battle energy in his body, but according to the special state of the Dragon Knight resonance, Leo was able to use them. It was a relatively close definition. It could probably be compared to a CPU and a graphics card. List was a quad-core or even octa-core CPU of a computer, with powerful processor performance. However, the graphics card was an integrated graphics card, so no matter how exquisite the battle energy was, it could only play an ordinary effect. Because the graphics card could not be used, it was easy to smoke. Leo, on the other hand, had an independent 2080 graphics card. Perhaps its CPU was rough, but its graphics performance was top-notch. When List's octa-core CPU was matched with Leo's 2080 graphics card, it could drive the top 3A masterpieces. Dragon Knight was such a match made in heaven. Boom. A large pit with a diameter of more than 10 meters was blasted on the ground. List controlled Leo to land around the pit, and a few wisps of smoke rose from the ashes at the edge of the pit, creating a mysterious boss aura for him and Leo. Now that I know the power of the Dragon Knight before I entered the Dragon Knight mode, I'm afraid I would have been hung up and beaten by the Dragon Knight mode. Fortunately, I didn't encounter a real Dragon Knight before, otherwise I'm afraid I would have been slain within 3 to 5 moves, and the dragon slaying battle would have been a joke. Despite the lingering fear in his heart, he quickly felt relieved. With the guidance of the smoke mission, he had already entered the Dragon Knight mode before the dragon slaying battle. After a few more run-ins, he believed that he would become stronger and stronger, and the capital to deal with the dragon slaying battle would be stronger. Most importantly, now that the mission was successfully completed, Achi was also about to advance to Magic Shooter. With the combined power of a Dragon Knight and a Magic Shooter, they could go anywhere in the world. I just don't know if the Dragon Knight has an exclusive Dragon Chi secret book. The Sapphire family has the Dragon Knight Chi secret book left behind by the first Grand Duke. I don't know if it is a Chi secret book specially for riding a dragon. Alas, I boast of myself as a genius and have a vision far beyond that of the Aborigines, but I have yet to create a Chi secret book. Back then, when he was bragging to William Levis and the others, he was very disdainful, saying that the combat energy manuals of the predecessors might not necessarily be suitable for him, and that he could create new combat energy manuals at any time. In the end, after several interruptions, he succeeded in riding a dragon, but he still didn't create any battle aura manuals. Actually, you can't blame me for bragging. I really don't have the time to study battle aura manuals. Who would have thought that after becoming a Sky Knight half a year ago, I would directly succeed in riding a dragon without any buffer at all? He comforted himself. He swore to himself that he would create a real dragon fighting technique based on his and Leo's actual situation. If there was enough time, he would also supplement the battle aura manuals of the Earth Knight and Sky Knight stages. On one hand, it was to leave a souvenir, and on the other hand, it could enrich the future generations. In addition, I must obtain a battle aura domain secret book, and I must also accumulate a lot of battle aura secret skills. Although Magic Eye and Aura Attenuation are good, they are all auxiliary, and there are no battle aura secret skills. Before he could ride a dragon and was known as a Ghost Blade, the battle aura secret skills already didn't play too much of a role. They were more of an aid for the Sky Knight to compete with each other. But it was always good to have more battle aura secret skills, which could further enrich the family's heritage. In any case, if he really wanted to establish a country overseas, List didn't want his country to quickly decline after a few generations. At the very least, it should last for thousands of years so that the bloodline could spread to all parts of the world. After tossing and turning for a long time, the sky was already dark. Both man and dragon were so tired that their stomachs were growling. They squatted in the wilderness, one happily nibbling on a large steak, the other drinking a bit of milk to quench his thirst. When Leo was full, he rewarded him with a few potions as dessert. List waved his hand and had Leo turn into a ball of flame, which rushed into his body. Let's go back. I have to talk to Achi in detail after exploring a lot of new experiences. Perhaps these contents, especially the concept of magic particle movement, will inspire her to promote to an arch-wizard. He whistled. In the distance, the chocobo Loki, who was leisurely grazing, eagerly ran over, carrying him like a gust of wind towards the flower town. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Loki tried, List found it boring. After riding a dragon, riding another mount was a far cry from the riding experience. But in any case, after arriving at the seaside villa, he still grabbed a handful of secret wheat grains as a reward. So it was. After eating a sumptuous dinner in the castle, List went straight to the seaside villa. The villa's room was bright. In order to protect Achi's eyes from reading, studying, and experimenting at night, he installed several crystal lamps in the room. In any case, he was now rich and had no shortage of money. Achi, I'm back. List was about to open the door and quickly communicate with Achi. But the next moment the door opened by itself, or rather was opened by Achi. The little siren stood in front of the door, smiling sweetly. Big brother. Achi, you. List was a little stunned. In the past, because Achi could not move freely in the room, he had to open the door himself. He did not expect that this time, it would be Achi opening the door for him. Most importantly, Achi was standing on the floor in front of him. List's eyes couldn't help but wander down along Achi's eyes, past several mysterious areas covered by the water ribbon, past her smooth thighs and calves, and directly fixed on a pair of white and flawless feet, pink and tender, which made people want to play with them unconsciously. Achi seemed to be a little uncomfortable under List's hot gaze. She could not help but shrink her feet and said, Big brother, Achi has advanced to magic shooter. Magic shooter? You have advanced to magic shooter. List was shocked. In an instant he forgot about Achi's feet. He directly picked up Achi by the waist and spun her around twice. My little siren is amazing. You are the only magic shooter in this sea area and even in the 2 kingdoms that I know of. There were no records of magic shooters in the Eagle Kingdom and the Steel Ridge Kingdom. As for whether there were any in private, at least List knew that Achi was the only magic shooter. In a time when the magic network had been shrinking since the era of the Moon Empire, it was not easy to produce a new magic shooter. Chapter 681. Whether Achi was considered an adult or not was not easy to say. However, since Achi was promoted to a magic shooter, her body had been elemental remodeling with the help of the magic net. While retaining the independence of her body and mind, she was integrated into the magic net and became a part of it. The magic net is a very strange existence. Achi can't perceive where it ends, but it covers every corner of the world. It can open a hole anywhere and then release magic with the help of the magic net. Even on land, it can release powerful water magic. Achi described the magic net in detail. Although she said that the Dragon Knight was like a smaller version of the magic net, the Dragon Knight's magic net and the real magic net were worlds apart. Of course, even if Achi tried to describe the image of the magic net, List's understanding of the magic net was still very vague. After all, the magic net was a very abstract existence, and it was difficult to really understand its existence without touching it personally. It was more like a rule existence than a real object. So the magic you absorbed already belongs to the magic of the magic net. Do you think it can reach the level of dragon will? List asked. Although he was tempted by Achi's pair of white feet when he first saw her, he couldn't help but feel restless. But the desire for knowledge and the respect for power made him quickly put aside the distractions in his mind and enthusiastically discuss the magic net with Achi, chasing the truth together. It may be different from the dragon will that you described, brother, but Achi has to analyze Bilio's dragon will and the magic of the magic net. That's not difficult. Bilio can have as much dragon will as he wants. With List's current relationship with Bilio, Bilio would not refuse if he wanted some dragon will. But you know that I have the magic eye. Now release the magic of the magic net and let me check it. What is so magical about it? Achi nodded. Then he cast the basic water magic water arrow. A water arrow condensed in his hand. He didn't shoot it but just floated quietly. His pupils were like a starry vortex. List had already cast the magic eye and carefully observed the water arrow. There was blue and white water attribute magic that continuously maintained its existence. This type of magic was extremely condensed, but unfortunately, List didn't enter Dragon Rider mode, so he couldn't observe the movement of the magic particles. However, he could sense that the mana of the weave was different from ordinary mana. It dissipated much slower and was much more condensed. My initial feeling is that the weave's mana isn't at the limit of draconic will. It's more like the ordinary mana released by a dragon. Or to put it more accurately, it should be at the level of my draconic fighting chi. I didn't expect the mana of the weave to be so powerful. Combat aura was a special kind of magic extracted from the human body. Beginner do chi, intermediate do chi, advanced do chi, this was a complete advancement form. Basically, advanced do chi was the final form of do chi. As for the dragon aura, strictly speaking, it no longer belonged to the category of aura. It was continuously fused and purified with the help of the dragon's magic power, reaching a higher level of magic power. Just as you said, the Dragon Knight is a smaller version of the weave. List's imagination gradually went wild. Does this mean that the draconic fighting chi released by the Dragon Knight is actually very similar to the mana of the weave? So the draconic fighting chi and the weave's mana are of the same level? Using levels might not be accurate. It would be clearer to use energy levels to express it. Big Brother's words make a lot of sense. Chi nodded in agreement. She rather worshipped List because List had imparted too much mystical knowledge to her, such as the movement of celestial bodies, the Big Bang gravitational waves, wormholes, the 3 laws of thermodynamics as well as the structure of cells, the 4 major tissues of the human body and so on. In her heart, List's knowledge was far more profound than that of any other mage. This was indeed the case. The knowledge that List brought was the summary and exploration of Earth's scientists over 1,000 years. The humans of this world were still immersed in do chi and magic, unable to extricate themselves from it. All day long they were either training or fighting. Farming depended on the elves, and mining depended on the dragons. They did not have the motivation to develop technology. The triangular theory of matter, magic, and spirit was too broad, causing humans to not focus on material technology, but to walk the path of magic expansion. But it was normal when one thought about it. As long as one trained, they could become stronger and plunder everything. Who would be willing to painstakingly invent and create? Even as a transmigrator, List had enjoyed the light of civilization in modern society, but he was still attracted by magic and could not extricate himself from becoming stronger. He had no interest in promoting the development of the Industrial Revolution. If one could have everything by picking up elves and riding a dragon, why not choose such a shortcut? Why not promote the Industrial Revolution? Instead of spending hundreds of years constantly promoting industrial development and barely creating weapons of mass destruction like the atomic bomb that could grow mushrooms, it was better to ride a few more dragons. All in all, List could indeed be called a polymath in this world. He and Chi carefully compared the magic of the dragons and the weave, and came to the conclusion that the 2 types of magic were essentially at the same level, belonging to the same energy level. The will of the dragon is the ultimate type of magic. The ordinary magic of the dragons and the magic of the weave are high-level magic, and the other stray magic is low-level magic. The discussion lasted until late into the night. Chi concluded, the other forms of magic such as combat aura, blood magic, druid magic, and the magic inherited by ancient warriors and ancient wizards should all be branches of low-level magic. They are still low-level magic in essence, while dragon combat aura is a branch of high-level magic. List quickly recorded in his thick bast paper notebook, the knight's combat aura is a training system based on low-level magic. After becoming a dragon knight, the combat aura turns into high-level magic. It is the same for mages. All kinds of magic are evolved from low-level magic, and only archmages turn into high-level magic. Based on what was known so far, only dragon knights and archmages were involved in high-level magic power. The other ancient warriors and ancient mages were still working on low-level magic power. That was why during the era of the Moon Empire, when the weave was strong, mages ruled the world. At the current stage, the weave had shrunk, and the dragon knight who owned the weave emitted light and heat. Thus the knight began to rule the world. Compared to the worship of knowledge of mages, the knight's training was more barbaric, causing the prosperous civilization of the Moon Empire to be lost after a few thousand years. We should divide them into levels and define the nature of each level of magic. This will make it easier to publish books in the future. List finally said, low-level magic is called low-energy magic, high-level magic is called high-energy magic, and the ultimate magic, which is the will of the dragon, is called super energy magic. In short, they were low magic, high magic, and supreme magic. Earth Knight, Sky Knight, Domain Knight, Mage, Archmage, Bearskin, and Vampire were all low magic professions. Dragon Knight and Archmage were high magic professions. Chapter 682. In the final analysis, the difference between low magic, high magic, and supreme magic lay in the difference in the speed of motion of the magic particles, but it was difficult to clearly understand the nature of such a microscopic level. Liszt only told Achi the concept of particle motion and no longer delved into it. Achi, who had been promoted to magic shooter, had proved that her talent could beat most humans in seconds, and her IQ should be able to win a Nobel Prize on Earth. Therefore, handing over the more difficult problems to Achi could better liberate Liszt for his training as a Dragon Knight. But before he left, he had another thing to do: measure Achi's 3 measurements and other data, and then make a batch of clothes for her. Pajamas, home clothes, magic cloaks, and aristocratic dresses must all be there. If one day Liszt founded a country, Achi would be the country's eldest princess. Although he could basically determine Achi's physical data at a glance, Liszt still took out a tape measure himself and carefully measured Achi to get the most accurate number. After recording the number on the thick bast paper, Liszt smiled and touched Achi's hair. "After the clothes are made, you can live in my castle. You can go anywhere you want in my territory, but try not to reveal your siren identity so as not to attract the malice of others." "I know, brother." Achi nodded reservedly. She had been yearning for life on land for a long time. "When the time comes, if you like, I can arrange for you to go to the Mage Tower where you know Chris and other great mages. You can arrange for them to work on some simple topics and let them help you share the research tasks. Of course, don't reveal your identity as a magic shooter for the time being." Whether it was him or Achi, they had just advanced to a high magic profession. They needed time to become stronger, so it was better to keep a low profile for the time being. Finally, after kissing Achi's forehead, Liszt got up and left the seaside villa. After returning to the castle, he handed Achi's figure data to the castle's housekeeper, Mrs. Morrison, and asked her to arrange for someone to sew clothes immediately. "First, make a set of magic cloaks and undershirts, which must be worn tomorrow morning. At the same time, make a set of aristocratic dress, which must be completed within 4 days. The other clothes can wait." Even the most professional tailor could not sew a set of clothes immediately. The better the clothes, the more time was needed, especially the aristocratic dress. "Master, how should I choose the fabric of the clothes?" "The best fabric, the same size as my clothes." The next morning, the tailor arranged by Mrs. Morrison had already made a magic cloak and undershirt overnight. Liszt gave them to Achi after he finished his morning exercises. "Achi, put on this suit, I will take you to Flower Town and Black Horse Island." "Yes." Liszt left the room and closed the door. He didn't think about peeking at the scenery while Achi was changing her clothes. In fact, he didn't even think about it. He was just chatting awkwardly with the giant kelp sprite Parker in the worm room of the pond. "Achi actually grew legs and became as handsome as you and me." "Really?" "Of course there is still a gap." "Hee hee. I don't like her hair. Tawny is the prettiest color, like handsome Parker. I suggest you also change into a tawny suit. It looks pleasing to the eye. Otherwise it will be difficult for your handsomeness to keep up with Parker's footsteps." Liszt smiled. "I also think tawny is better, but I am a nobleman. Frac Abier is the most suitable dress for my identity." Chatting with Parker was basically meaningless narcissistic words. There was something wrong with this great elf's brain circuit. Fortunately, Achi was not a slow little girl and quickly changed her clothes. Black leather boots, a black wizard robe, and a black hooded magic cloak completely covered Achi's body. Only a pure and flawless face was hidden under the hood. Her big blue eyes were still deep and clear, making it difficult to ignore the look in them. There was no beauty or ugliness in the wizard cloak. It was almost the same for people of any size, so there was nothing to comment on. Liszt nodded slightly. Parker shook his head quickly. "It doesn't look good, it doesn't look good. Achi looks too ugly in black clothes. The only advantage is that it covers your blue hair. You should wear tawny clothes, a color like the handsome Parker, or you will be too far behind." There was no smile on Achi's little face. Instead, she felt a little awkward. "Brother, Achi doesn't like to wear clothes. You'll get used to it. These fabrics are very uncomfortable." "Brother, you wear clothes like this every day. Don't you feel uncomfortable?" "Because I'm already used to it. However, the clothes here really don't fit well. I'll feel much better after wearing them for a few more days." Wearing clothes is very inconvenient. They will get wet when you swim. Achi has worn leather armor once, and it's even more uncomfortable when it's wet. She rarely complained. Obviously, the clothes caused her a series of discomfort. Brother, in blood magic, clothes can be made into magic equipment that can be stored in the body at will. Achi wants to make such clothes herself. If you can improve the vampiric magic, it will naturally be a good thing. Also, make me a set of combat clothes that can be stored and stored. List understood what Achi was thinking. When he swam on the rainbow whale Lolth, he often had to endure the discomfort of wearing wet clothes. Achi was full of confidence. Well, this kind of magic is not difficult. Achi will soon be able to achieve it. Let's go to Flower Town and then go to Black Horse Island. There is a black dragon Paris there. Her physical problems are still waiting for me to solve. You can help me with this. I know. Brother said that Black Dragon Paris is the leader of the Black Horse Island Patrol Group. She once saw the Light Dragon and was eroded by the magic of the Light Dragon. Achi used to think about how to save this Black Dragon. I have a lot of inspiration that should be able to provide help to Brother. Achi, who was wearing leather boots, walked a few steps to get used to the heels behind the boots. Because there were too many feces in the city, boots had finger-long heels. Outside the seaside villa stood List's knight, valet, and others. Seeing List go in alone but come out with a female magician, they had some doubts in their hearts, but no one showed them. For List, the son of glory, this was just a normal operation. Whenever List went out riding a dragon, they would not be shocked at all. It was just that they were used to it. Bring the carriage over. List ordered. The knight immediately rushed the carriage. List personally helped Achi into the carriage, and then he himself boarded the carriage and accompanied Achi in the carriage around Flower Town. They enjoyed the work of ordinary people in the town and the beautiful countryside scenery. Finally, the carriage stopped at the entrance of the nameless castle. List showed his gentlemanly demeanor and helped Achi down. He smiled and said, Achi, you have lived in this castle for many days, but this is the first time you have seen it in its entirety. Yes. Achi raised her head and looked at the two-story castle, showing a happy smile. It was a beautiful memory worth remembering for a lifetime. She met her closest brother, List, and opened the door of the magic world under the leadership of List. Since then, her fate has completely changed. She is no longer a little siren in the sea, but a magician who pursues the truth. At this time, from the apple orchard, a huge black dog came to List's side, rubbed List, and looked up at Achi. His nose kept sniffing Achi's scent. It's Dosen. Achi recognized the big black dog and wanted to reach out and touch Dosen's fur. Suddenly, a familiar cry came from the castle. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.